Hello guys, this is your fanfiction dojo and we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Naruto Build His Harem in Land of Wave Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfic. L. Sasuke was mildly annoyed. No, he was actually very annoyed. Since he'd lost to Naruto the previous day, he'd been pondering the enigma that was this, new and improved, Dobi. First he'd pulled out a technique used by another village, something he was sure the moron hadn't picked up just by seeing Zabuza perform it once. Then he'd exhibited a great amount of stealth and had actually managed to pull one over, and humiliate him. I'm going to squeeze out the info about his new skills after or during this damn exam. I just wish he would shut up about being the leader of my team, obviously just a fluke, but still it makes me look bad. He had been dead set on doing the said squeezing after his match with Naruto the previous day, but the Dobi had simply vanished afterwards. He wasn't even at the Ichiraku's, nor was he home or in any of his usual training spots. Sasuke had abandoned his search well after 9, only to miss the object of his fervent search returning from a psyching session, which involved only slight warm-ups, with Lee and Guy Sensei. When Naruto had appeared to the academy, there wasn't the time, or the privacy, to grill him about his abilities, and Sasuke was yet again forced to delay the inevitable. He vowed that the Dobi's secrets would be his soon enough. After entering, he'd gotten to a slightly better mood though. There had been a slight scuffle at the door to the fake room 301, which had been stopped by a weird green spandex wearing genin. Then he'd met someone who really piqued his interest, Hyuga Neji, last year's Rookie of the Year, and reputedly the greatest genius born in the Hyuga clan in 100 years. Incidentally, Sasuke was appalled that someone could be so arrogant and overconfident as the said boy was. Nonetheless, here, finally, was someone worthy to fight. Naruto had naturally ruined the moment by giving an order of, stop that pointless staring contest and let's go already. His mood, already sufficiently dark, was about to get worse when Lee appeared and challenged him to a fight, that was prevented by Naruto, who politely asked Lee not to damage his sidekick. He'd been seething since then, devising ways to make Naruto suffer. The said boy was in a tight spot at the moment. Ino had jumped out of the blue and latched herself to Sasuke, squeaking a delighted, "Sasuke-kun, you are late. ... You too, Naruto-kun," which caused an instant reaction from Sakura, who jumped to defend her claim on Sasuke. Naruto felt threatened. He was in between two scary girls who would probably beat him into a pulp if he sided with either one. Luckily he was rescued by appearance of Nara Shikamaru and Akamichi Choji, who were soon followed by Team 8. Using the distraction that these new arrivals caused, Naruto was able to slip away from the bickering girls and into relative safety of the other rookies. Inuzuka Kiba, our dog boy as Naruto dubbed him, was bragging to Sasuke about how they had trained a lot and would kick everyone's ass. So Naruto decided that aloud, "Shut up. Sasuke might lose, but I won't lose to the likes of you," was in order. His proclamation was answered by very faint and stuttering voice belonging to Hyuga Hinata, who was, in his opinion, a weird and shy girl who always looked away when he looked at her. Kyubi giggled for some reason at this mental description of the girl. Keeping her eyes downcast, and using all her willpower not to faint or get yet another nosebleed, the images of Naruto in the process of removing his pants was permanently imprinted into her mind. She managed to stutter out a, "Gomen Naruto-kun, Kiba-kun didn't mean it in that way," which caused Kiba to raise an eyebrow at her. "Damn, there she goes again. Can't she realize that if she wants to make me jealous she should pick someone more plausible as a fake target of affection than that moron?" The third member of Team 8, Aburame Shino, didn't say anything but took note of Kiba's reaction. "Damn, there he goes again. Why is he so dead set on the idea that Hinata-chan is in love with him and is only trying to make him jealous by getting all tongue-tied on the mere mention of Naruto? Seems that Naruto is over Sakura too. This could get messy if he realizes that Hinata is head over heels for him and decides that he too might like her. The situation was escalating. Hinata had let out a surprisingly loud, kawaii. After having noticed Akai-chan peeking from her carry pouch and had made beeline towards the said fox. Kiba, and to an extent Akamaru, who immensely enjoyed the prolonged petting sessions he got from Hinata, instantly felt surges of jealousy and rushed forward to protect their interests, causing Shino to move forward and restrain the dog boy and his dog. Hinata, on the other hand, suddenly became aware that she was only an arm's length away from the object of her affections and petting something that she had snatched from Naruto-kun. Mortified by the situation, she was barely able to hear Naruto, who was currently saying something about Akai-chan and I think she likes you, promptly handed the fox back to Naruto while sputtering out apologies and then quickly hid behind Shino's back. This volatile situation was diffused by the arrival of a silver-haired genin who introduced himself as Kabuto and warned them against attracting too much attention. He then proceeded to explain how he was a seventh-time veteran and volunteered to give a few tips to the rookies of the bunch. He then flashed out a deck of cards and began to explain how his nin info cards worked. Soon enough Sasuke was hooked and asked, "Do you have individual info cards? And if so, would you happen to have info on Sabaku no Gaara of the Sand, Rock Lee and Uzumaki Naruto of the Leaf?" Kabuto nodded and said, "You have their names, should be easy then." Whipping out cards on Lee and Gaara, he explained the basics on them. When he was about to turn over Naruto's card, the fox boy in question decided to cut in. "You know Sasuke-tem, if you want to know about me, you could just ask." Kabuto raised an eyebrow over his glasses. "You are Naruto-kun." Seeing him nod, he quickly scanned the contents of the card and looked over at the boy again. "There's some interesting stuff in this card." He nodded towards the other rookies. "Is it okay for me to show it to them?" Naruto pondered for a moment. There could be stuff about Kyuubi there, though he doubted that. "Can I see it first?" he asked and was immediately given the card. Looking it over, he handed it back to Kabuto and shrugged. "Yeah, sure. Though I think that bit about my academy graduation is supposed to be classified or something. But then again, maybe not." This conversation had naturally piqued everyone's curiosity and they were now dying to see the card, especially Sasuke, who was ready to make a grab for the said card had Naruto declined to show it. Whipping the card around, Kabuto held it up for everyone to see. Uzumaki Naruto. Worst in his class in every subject. His graduation from the academy was rather unusual as well. After failing to produce a viable bunshin during the exam, he was tricked by a teacher to break into the Hokage Tower and steal a forbidden scroll of seals. He then saved another teacher and defeated the traitor using Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, a Junin-level technique that he'd mastered in space of few hours. Checking the card again for more info, he continued. After graduating, was placed into Genin Team 7. Mission record is D rank 19, B rank 1, A rank 1. While successfully completed A and B rank missions as a Genin, that's fairly unusual. He stopped for a moment. According to my info, his taijutsu and ninjutsu are average at best and genjutsu below that. He hasn't been rated for those recently though, so it's hard to say. It also says here that he has recently activated a dormant bloodline limit which grants him enhanced senses. Not bad. Raising an eyebrow in surprise, he continued. Stamina and chakra are off the charts for a Genin, probably somewhere between Chunin and Junin. Also, report from his teachers and Junin instructor states that he is loud. Flipping Naruto's card back into the deck, he looked back at the rookies who were more or less intimidated by the realization that they were in a serious situation and would be competing against the best the other villages would have to offer. Naruto had even begun to shake, making Kabuto think that maybe he wasn't so confident as he was reputed to be. Sakura was about to cheer him up when the blonde let loose a deafening, "My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I won't lose to you bastards." Followed by a loud, "You got that." And a delighted, "Ah, that felt great." This bold, others would describe it as suicidal, declaration caused a multitude of reactions. Gaara simply shrugged. He wasn't going to pick a fight with other Jinchuriki, and told his brother to shut up and stay away from Naruto. Neji scoffed when Lee pumped his fist in the air and declared something about the power of youth in Naruto in particular, while Tenten simply shrugged. Kiba was sort of pissed for Naruto hogging the spotlight but decided that it would only make him look worse when he'd get his butt kicked later in the exam. As for the rest, Ino bonked Sakura on the head after she stated that Naruto is too stupid to be intimidated, and Hinata was simply blushing and twiddling her fingers while repeating Naruto-kun, so strong, brave, Naruto-kun, in her mind. Some punks from the Hidden Sound also took offense, whether it was from Naruto's challenging outburst or from stating that the Hidden Sound was a minor and insignificant village, and picked a fight with Kabuto, only to be interrupted by a poof of smoke and a loud, "Quiet down, you worthless bastards." The smoke soon cleared, revealing a group of Chunins led by a large, scarred man who introduced himself as Morino Ibiki, the head examiner for the first test. After everyone was seated, Naruto heard a faint, he probably would have missed it was it not for his enhanced hearing, Naruto-kun, that caused him to turn to see a blushing Hinata, something which confused him to no end. The girl was acting like lovesick, albeit shy fangirl, and that just didn't make any sense. "Let's do our best," came out in a stuttering voice, to which Naruto replied with an absent nod. He was at the time trying to badger Kyuubi into helping with the test. Continuing his argument with the demon fox, he, in an effort to get more comfortable as it was somewhat hot in the classroom, removed his vest, causing, much to Kyuubi's amusement, a stifled gasp from blushing Hinata, who quickly covered her nose with a handkerchief. On a related note, there were similar reactions from several other females who got a good view of Naruto in a revealing fishnet shirt. Not soon after Ibiki had explained the rules of the exam, making Naruto sweat lightly from the intense killer intent that was flowing towards him from two distinct sources, namely his teammates. After the exam begun, Naruto quickly scanned the questions with Kyuubi, who after some coaxing had agreed to help, although Naruto couldn't for the life of him understand why Kyuubi would want to be called Q-chan, the greatest scientific genius in the universe. Before agreeing to help, he shrugged it off as a probable girl thing. The questions were hard, too hard for most genin, and there was something weird about the 10th question. "There's a catch here, Kit. There's something about that 10th question, I'm most curious. Anyway, you could just take a nap and we'll answer that last question correctly. Saves us the trouble of writing all sorts of complicated equations on the small amount of space allotted." With that and a small giggle, Kyuubi was again immersed in her plan to make Naruto realize that Hinata had a crush on him, and dreaming about the power of grandchildren. With a combination of Byakugan and Naruto's demonic blood, she let out loose another barrage of giggles, causing Naruto to wonder just what the hell was the damn fox plotting. He soon got bored though. Napping just wasn't an option when there was so much tension in the air. Not to mention that the killer intent he'd felt earlier had intensified when he had tried to take a nice nap. Deciding to be creative, he began to doodle on the answer boxes, blissfully unaware that Hinata could see what he was doing with her Byakugan and was mortified by this carefree attitude. A soft whisper of, "Naruto-kun, you can look at my test," from his right side interrupted his doodling. Quickly glancing over, he noticed a blushing, as per usual, Hinata, who was holding out her test paper for him to see and whispering, "You can look at my answers, Naruto-kun." He quickly declined, hastened by the scratching of pens he heard from the watchdogs, explaining that he was just passing time until he got the last question and pointing out that she might get into trouble from helping him. He was confused by Hinata again though. No one had ever offered to do something like this for him. More he thought about it, the louder Kyuubi's giggles, snorts and outright laughter got. The bastard fox obviously knew but didn't volunteer info. He went through a myriad of reasons but none of them seemed to fit. Maybe she was trying to set me up with false info or something, but that doesn't seem to me like something Hinata would do. Hey, maybe she's in love with me or something. Shaking his head in amusement, he dismissed the idea as absurd and continued his artistic work. Some time and several abstract pieces of art later, the head examiner Morino Ibiki announced his do-or-die rule for the 10th question. Naruto tensed initially but soon relaxed as Kyuubi explained her theory of the question. Quite clever, this human. I bet he's using this as a trick question to see who's willing to risk it all to continue. It might be enjoyable to talk with this one someday. He seems well versed in psychology. The now reassured Naruto raised his hand and then slammed it into the table, yelling, "Don't underestimate me. I will not run, and even if I will remain Genin forever, I'll still become Hokage somehow. I'm not afraid." This caused the tension to deflate instantly and made Ibiki cringe, as the few who had been teetering on the edge of giving up apparently grew a spine after Naruto's outburst. He smiled and said, "You all who stayed have now passed the first part of the exam," and began to explain exactly why they had passed while taking note that Naruto had started furiously scribbling something to his test sheet. Interesting guy, this Uzumaki Naruto. Ibiki had just wished them luck when a ball of cloth shot through the window, and then with the help of several kunai turned into a banner, heralding the entrance of the examiner of the second test, Mitarashi Anko. The examiner was quite baffled when there was almost no reaction from the group, who had the collective thought of "Sheesh, she's just as loud as that blonde moron" running through their minds, but shrugged it off and began to question Ibiki about why there were so 26 teams still left, followed by a statement that she would reduce the numbers by at least half. After that, she gathered the Chunin hopefuls, of whom some were quite anxious by that last statement, and led them towards training area 44, leaving behind Ibiki in the now empty classroom. Ibiki, his curiosity roused by Naruto's antics, took note of the blonde's test sheet. To his amusement, the answer boxes had been turned into cartoon screens that depicted someone, who apparently was Naruto, beating up others participants of the exam. On the bottom left box was a surprise though. A doodle of a fox with 9 tails was drawn there with a word balloon that said, "Nice work on the test, Ibiki-san. For a human, though you could have upped the pressure a bit. If you want tips on making it nastier for the future takers, do pay the boy a visit. He didn't move a muscle for a long time until he, all the while chuckling, folded the sheet and went to look for the Hokage. Interesting guy indeed." Near training area 44, or the Forest of Death, Anko was attempting to scare her charges, only to be foiled by Naruto, who made a quite comic imitation of her Forest of Death introduction and, what was worse, caused amusement instead of trepidation among the genins. Deciding to make an example of the blonde, she flipped out a kunai and threw it towards Naruto, slicing open his cheek and causing lovely red blood to spill out, tasty blood that she was happily licking off Naruto's cheek. After having her kunai returned by a long-tongued ninja from the hidden grass, she remarked in a suitably cheery voice, "Looks like we have a lot bloodthirsty ones in the test. This should be fun." Succeeding in totally creeping most of the genins out, she began to give out consent forms. Naruto was troubled. Anko had given them 30 minutes to decide whether or not to sign their forms. That didn't bother him. He had signed his and was quite sure that both Sakura and Sasuke would sign theirs as well. What bothered him was the weight of responsibility. He was the leader and he was supposed to come up with a plan of sorts that would get them through a difficult mission that could last 5 days. More than that, he was supposed to make a plan that would not only keep them alive but keep them in the exam as well. Sighing, he absently scratched a kai, a habit he had developed when he was in deep thought, and stopped his aimless walking when he noticed Hinata, who seemed to be in deep thought too. I really should thank her for that offer of help during the first exam. With this though, he headed towards the girl and called out, "Hey Hinata, what are you doing here?" Hinata stiffened, blushed and turned towards Naruto while stuttering out, "Naruto-kun, She then noticed the cut on Naruto's cheek and rummaged through her equipment pouch for a jar of healing salve she'd made herself, and in her haste totally ignoring Naruto, who was thanking her. Much to Naruto's amazement, she then lifted the jar of salve while mumbling out a, "Anyo, here, salve, wound." "Huh, what's this? Healing salve for my cheek or something?" Sheesh, there she goes again. First trying to help me at the exam and now this. Hey, maybe she really does like me or something. Taking the salve and nearly causing Hinata to faint when their hands accidentally brushed together, he said. Hey Hinata, I actually was trying to thank you for what you did in the exam and now you give me a healing salve. I really can't take all of this, you know. Erg, why am I such a weakling that I can't tell him? I must be stronger and tell him that I know he isn't a Kyuubi, that he's someone I look up to. Blushing furiously, she struggled to gather courage and let out a, Naruto-kun, please you must, after which she hung her head. Damn it, Hyuga Hinata, you are so weak. Naruto only shook her head at the girl but decided that it would be impolite not to accept the gift. Well, if you insist then, I guess I'll take it. He flashed out a dazzling smile, causing the shy Hyuga's heartbeat go wild. But in return, you'll have to let me treat you to some deluxe ramen at Ichiraku's as way of saying thank you. This pretty much froze Hinata's mind. After all, she'd just been asked out by none other than Naruto-kun. But she did manage a strangled, hi, and a shy nod. Seeing as that was settled, Naruto bid a brief farewell, pointedly ignoring the hoots and catcalls from Kyuubi, and set out to find his team to discuss the plan he had formed. Soon after, he found both Sasuke and Sakura, who had their consent forms ready and signed. In a hushed tone, he told them to listen up. I think we should head towards the tower using our best speed. If we meet any other teams on the way, we take them out and hope they have the right scroll on them. If not, then we set up traps near the tower and ambush any teams that come our way until we get the right one. Then we enter the tower, which I think is a safe zone, to wait out the remaining time. After explaining his plan, he asked for opinions. Sakura and Sasuke both agreed, as they had been thinking on the same lines themselves, though Sasuke wanted to stay near the tower and ambush more teams, an idea that Naruto, and surprisingly, Sakura both opposed. Not soon later, Team 7 was heading towards the tower. Naruto was running point, carrying a kai and keeping a keen eye, ear and nose to the surrounding. They were followed by Sakura, while Sasuke, carrying their heaven scroll, was bringing up the rear some 25 meters behind Naruto. After about 20 or so minutes later, Naruto, on Sakura's request, called for a break. Deciding that it was a good time to answer the call of nature, he let a kai out of her pouch and went, again on Sakura's request, some distance away to do his business, only to be ambushed by a trio of mist nins. Well, they didn't really ambush him. He heard them coming even before the clearing he was on began to fill with mist. Hey, that won't work too well against me, I'm afraid. Maybe we'll get lucky and they have an earth scroll. The mist nins, who'd been certain of an easy victory, soon realized that the mist they had created hindered them more than it did their intended prey. And that their prey wasn't all that alone when all of them were simultaneously and efficiently pummeled into oblivion by Naruto and 5 aiding clones. The mist faded along with the consciousness of the mist nins, leaving Naruto and the clones free to search their bodies, and soon one of the widely grinning clones tossed Naruto a scroll. Too bad it was a heaven scroll though, but still, when combined with a stack of explosive tags, he'd found not bad loot for such an easy job. Snickering to himself about the stupidity of his would-be stalkers and about the dismay Sasuke would feel from not having been in the fight, he dismissed the clones, finished his business and headed back towards the others, and received a fist-in-face's greeting from Sasuke. Flying backwards against a tree, he yelled in confusion, "What the hell did you do that for, you bastard?" Sasuke meanwhile was stalking Naruto and demanded to know where the real Naruto was. Seeing the confusion, he pointed at Naruto, and declared that he was a fake because there was no cut on his cheek. This caused the said Naruto to feel his cheek and exclaim, "Wow, you are right, Tem, it's healed. That stuff Hinata gave me must be amazing." Standing up, he glared at Sasuke, "And you, I'm the real Naruto and Akai-chan can prove it for me." Much to Sakura's relief and Sasuke's dismay, the said fox happily bounced to Naruto and began yapping away, causing Naruto to nod at his pet fox. Yes, Akai-chan, he's a degenerate bastard who's paranoid. For a good reason though, I ran into some trouble and all. Naruto didn't have time to explain about the trouble he had been in as a violent gust of wind suddenly swept him off his feet and into the air. When he came to his senses, the first thing he noticed was that he wasn't alone, though given the company of an overtly large snake he would have preferred to be. The snake wasted no time in attacking, and while Naruto managed to dodge the initial attack, he wasn't able to avoid the tail and was subsequently swallowed. His discomfort at the thought of being eaten was heightened by a slight tingling of his skin that began immediately after he was swallowed into the snake's gullet, and Kyuubi's disdainful, "Kid, I seriously don't feel like turning into snake shit." Thinking for ways to get out from the snake's digestive tract, he thought about burning his way out with foxfire, but just as he was about to do so, he remembered something else, a mental image of him and Sasuke eating too much and then barfing. Several moments of silence followed before a muffled, "Take this. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," was heard, followed by the snake suffering a lethal overdose of Uzumaki Naruto. Sniffing himself in disgust, Naruto performed a set of hand seals to activate a low-level water jutsu that he used to douse himself with water. Sniffing himself again, he decided that the stench was bearable until he found his team and/or a stream, whichever came first. Meanwhile, Sakura and Akai-chan, who had found Sakura only minutes after the wind had hit, met with Sasuke, who was, judging from Akai's behavior, the real deal. They were at the moment following Akai towards the direction where Naruto had flown off to when they came face to face with the boy in question, only to go defensive when Akai began to growl furiously at the imposter. The dispelling henge revealed none other than the long-tongued ninja from the hidden grass. Annoying pet you got there. Belongs to the blonde loudmouth, does it not? Well, no matter. This only makes it more fun. The creepy ninja then pulled out an earth scroll, wrapped his freakish tongue around it, and of all things swallowed the scroll whole. Now, let's begin the battle for each other's scrolls, with our lives. They were struck down mercilessly, kunais stabbed into their skulls as they watched helplessly. Sasuke lost the contents of his stomach at the overwhelming fear. Struggling against it, he managed to pull out a kunai and in a final act of desperation plunge it into his own leg to distract himself from the fear. The last-ditch attempt worked too. He was able to pull Sakura out of harm's way. Pulling out the kunai that was still in his thigh, he silenced Sakura. Sakura, however, managed to free herself and scream out, "Sasuke-kun, snake!" just in time for them to evade the attacking reptile. Peppering the offending animal with shurikens, Sasuke landed panting, only to see its skin crack to reveal the, now even creepier, grass ninja, who instantly began to slither around a tree branch, only to be stopped by a few well-placed shurikens. There, on a higher tree branch, dirty and with a confident grin on his face, stood none other than the Uzumaki Naruto. "Sorry for being late, guys, but I had a dinner engagement I couldn't talk my way out of." The grass nin sneered at this. "Looks like you successfully defeated my giant snake, Naruto-kun. Maybe you aren't as worthless as you initially look like." Naruto wasn't least bit intimidated. "So it was you, huh? Well, your snake ate something that didn't agree with his stomach, a severe case of indigestion, I'm afraid." He was about to goad the snake freak some more, but was cut off by Sasuke, who decided to play politician and surrender their scroll to the grass nin. This didn't sit well with Naruto though, and he jumped to grab the scroll and punch Sasuke. "What the hell are you doing, you cowardly bastard? Just because you are too scared to fight doesn't mean you can do what the hell you want, and there's no guarantee that this freak would let us go even if you gave him the scroll." Sasuke was about to retort but was cut short from a chilling cackle that came from the grass nin. "You are correct, Naruto-kun. I have no need to let you go, seeing as I can easily kill you for the scroll." He began to leak out killing intent from his eyes again in an attempt to paralyze his victims, an attempt that worked on Sakura, Sasuke and apparently Naruto, then again maybe not. Naruto was frozen, yes, but not because of fear. He was frozen because the eyes that stared him from the face of this grass nin were the same eyes that he'd seen in his dream, eyes he'd seen when the Sandaime had used a henge to transform into a likeness of Orochimaru. In a burst of primal rage he dashed forward, only to be slammed towards a nearby tree by the tail of a snake that had suddenly appeared in a cloud of smoke. This didn't slow him down though. He wiped his mouth clean of blood, ran his tongue across the now menacing fangs that had formed and grabbed half a dozen shurikens. Throwing them towards the snake summoner, who was smiling somewhat conceitedly, he yelled out, "Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," turning the 6 shurikens into a hailstorm of 6 dozen shurikens. Orochimaru was no longer smiling. He had managed to dodge the shurikens, but they had effectively pummeled his summoned snake out of existence, and the brat was now stalking him in the eyes. "Orochimaru, I will kill you. You set Kyuubi against Konoha, you bastard, and because of you I had to grow without parents. There was no mistaking it." This was the Kyuubi brat, but how in the 9 hells did he know about his involvement in the Kyuubi attack, and how had he recognized him? Orochimaru was again forced on the defensive when another 6 dozen shurikens came flying towards him. This time the shurikens were only covering a nastier surprise. 2 kunai, wreathed in odd blue flame, came in the shadow of the shurikens. He managed to dodge one, but the other embedded itself in his left hand, causing the most excruciating pain he'd felt in some time. The wound began to bleed out bluish flames as Naruto's foxfire spread outwards from the kunai. This was one of his better tricks, though he could only maintain it for a few moments. The foxfire suddenly blinked out of existence, leaving dumbfounded Orochimaru staring at his blackened hand, and more specifically the kunai itself and a familiar seal that was engraved into it. With an evil grin he turned towards the cubified Naruto and said, "Kukukuku," so he sealed it inside his own whelp, this almost too deliciously ironic to be true. "Had you not caused me so much pain I would be inclined to invite to join me, Naruto-kun, but alas, you may have cost me a hand so in return." With that he shot out with speed that was beyond anything Naruto had seen and appeared before the startled boy. He then produced his freakish tongue and wrapped it around Naruto, uncovering his stomach at the same time. "Kukuku, so the seal is transferring energy to you, Naruto-kun, we'll have none of that now. Gogyo Fuin." With that he slammed his right hand onto the existing seal, causing Naruto to yell out in pain. Then, after grabbing the heaven scroll, with a disdainful flick of his tongue he hurled the boy away and turned to the 2 remaining members of Team 7. Sakura, who had shaken herself from the fear, saw Naruto fall and threw a kunai which pinned the blonde into a tree. She began to yell to Sasuke and managed to spark some response from the petrified boy. Sasuke then began a furious battle with the miffed Orochimaru and was doing rather well against him, seeing how he was almost unable to use his left hand. He managed to trap Orochimaru with chakra strings and then burn off his face, only to be again immobilized by him. Before leaving he bit Sasuke on the neck and said, "Sasuke-kun will seek me out, to seek power and to become strong like Naruto-kun, it's not like he can otherwise." With that he sunk into the tree branch and vanished, leaving a collapsing Sasuke and panicking Sakura behind. Naruto was feeling like crap. He hadn't passed out when that bastard Orochimaru did something to his seal, but it had been a close call. He'd managed, with help from Sakura, drag himself into a nearby cave where he promptly collapsed and fell asleep. When he woke up it was nearly dawn and he wasn't feeling any better either. He was feeling crippled, actually, as if something that had always been part of him was missing. Pulling up his vest he stared at his stomach and there it was, the seal had now additional markings. Few tests later he realized that not only did the additional seal block him off from Kyuubi's chakra, it also pretty much crippled or unbalanced his own chakra system. Frowning, Naruto sat up and motioned for Sakura. "Sakura-chan, that bastard Orochimaru did something really weird to me and totally messed up my chakra system. I'm going to try and see if I can fix it, but it'll take some time, so could you please stand guard a bit longer, or would you like to rest right away?" Sakura, who was relieved beyond words, quickly nodded. "It's my turn to be useful, so try and fix yourself up if you can. But don't take too long though, it's been a long night." She practically beamed at Naruto, who flashed a foxy smile in return and then lied back, closing his eyes. Naruto concentrated and then found himself in the corner of his mind that he dubbed as Kyuubi's realm. Earlier he had, following a request and instructions from Kyuubi, modified the surroundings from dank sewer into a sunny forest meadow with a small pond and a lively stream and turned the cage that bound Kyuubi into a cutesy collar. Looking about, he saw no sign of Kyuubi, but there was a dome of red and black energy near the stream. Making his way to the dome, he could see Kyuubi frantically pacing inside the dome. She stopped her pacing on the instant that she noticed Naruto and obviously tried to yell at the boy. Naruto was relieved too, she wasn't dead at least, but soon grew frustrated when they couldn't communicate. No sound passed through the dome and he really couldn't make out Kyuubi's weird sign language, so he only pointed at the new seal and then signed something he hoped Kyuubi would understand as, "I'll try and get help," and turned to leave. Naruto snapped back into the real world only to see Sasuke, covered with what appeared to be moving flame-like tattoos and feeling really off, brutally breaking the arms of a sound nin. He really didn't quite understand what the hell was happening. This wasn't Sasuke, was it? He also took note of Team 10 and Lee, who was laying sprawled on the ground. What the hell happened? Why is thick brows hurt and what's wrong with Sasuke Tem? He stood up groaning while warily watching the sound nin leader leave an earth scroll on the ground. Yo, what the hell is going on here? He immediately regretted asking when Sakura and Ino both launched into a heated explanation about Sasuke-kun's heroics. Sighing, he leaned over to Shikamaru, who in a low tone summed up the events for him. So basically, those sound guys beat up Lee and then you guys and then Sasuke did his thing. He scratched his head. Well, now that we have both scrolls, we'll just head out to the tower. It shouldn't be too far. He checked the position of the sun. We should be there before midday. Sasuke scoffed at this. Dobi, we only have one scroll. He then tossed a calculative glance at the Ino-Shika Cho trio, making them sweat slightly. Before he could even suggest that they take the scroll from Team 10, Naruto fished out another heaven scroll and said, "We have both scrolls, Sasuke, though not thanks to you. What the hell were you thinking anyway, trying to give our scroll away to that bastard Orochimaru? Luckily I ran into 3 mist nins that had a heaven scroll when I was meeting nature's call, so to speak." Walking over Sakura, he began to bandage her wounds. "You could have at least tried fighting before chickening out and trying to buy your way out of the situation. Well, no matter. He won't be using that hand of his for some time now." He finished his ministrations and again marveled the efficiency of Hinata's salve. It had visibly relieved the pain and had begun to slightly mend the wounds before he even could cover them with bandages. Standing up, he looked about again. "Right. Now let's go. I want to be in that tower before lunch." And so they left, leaving behind Shikamaru and Choji, who were eyeing the starry-eyed Ino rather nervously. They recognized the danger signs. Ino was quickly fixating on yet another idol, though they had to admit that it had been rather unnerving to see the dead last casually mention that he'd run into 3 mist nins and that he had managed to hurt the infamous Orochimaru. Nudging his friend, Choji whispered, "Do you think we should warn him? I mean, he's not a close friend or anything, but it would be the humane thing to do." He received no answer as they both suddenly felt the pressure of barely controlled killer intent that was radiating from Ino. Oblivious to their predicament, Naruto and the rest of Team 7 made it towards the tower with good speed despite their injuries. Other than a giant centipede, they didn't meet any nasty surprises on the way and made good time, arriving some time before midday. Wasting no time, they puzzled out the mystery of the scrolls and used them to summon none other than Iruka-sensei, who profusely congratulated them on passing the second exam. Naruto, suppressing his urge to jump up and down in excitement, requested that they be allowed to see the Hokage. "We ran into little trouble on our way here." Orochimaru made an appearance, so the name Orochimaru had almost magic-like effect. Iruka quickly ordered them to follow and led them to the upper levels of the tower and then ordered them to stay there and wait before disappearing through a door. Sasuke was seething as he listened Naruto's debriefing. I'll kill him. I'll hurt him. I specifically told him not to mention the bite that I got from Orochimaru, and what does the Dobi do? Blabs it all out. Even describes how my chakra felt. Evil. When I transformed, PFFT, he's just jealous and is now acting all high and mighty leader. He then glared at Sakura, who was nodding timidly to confirm what Naruto was saying. They're holding me back. That's what they're doing. I felt that strength and I needed to kill Itachi. Nothing else matters, and if that Dobi is trying to stand in my way. The Sandaime and Kakashi were both looking troubled as they listened to Naruto's debriefing. They had already heard of Orochimaru's involvement from Anko, who'd met the wounded Sannin. What they didn't know was that it had been Naruto who had caused the wound, which, according to Anko, had all but crippled him. They exchanged worried glances when Naruto mentioned the seal that was placed on his stomach in the bite on Sasuke. Finally, after the debriefing was over, the old man spoke. Kakashi, I trust you can perform a Fuja Hoen to take care of Sasuke's problem while I'll remove the seal placed on Naruto. Dismissing Kakashi along with Sasuke and Sakura, he then turned to Naruto. Now Naruto, lift up your shirt and I'll fix you right up. Naruto was again feeling great. He had a belly full of food, and what was best, the quarters they were given came with complete bathing facilities. He'd immediately, earning multitude of curses from Sakura, called the first bathing turn. After a nice long shower, he'd enjoyed even longer soak in the tub with Akai, who despite her initial reluctance towards bathing had quickly learned to enjoy nice warm soaks. He had washed his clothing too and was now wearing clean and, thanks to clever use of foxfire, mostly dry clothing. Only thing that was bugging him was the sulking Sasuke, who kept glaring at him with murder in his eyes. He shrugged and decided that it was time to go for a walk. Let Sakura-chan deal with that grouch. He was happy to note that the area meant for the participants of the exams was large, not to mention a strict, no fighting, zone, with open-air balconies that gave a good view of the forest and a multitude of rooms with training equipment ranging from dumbbells to training dummies. Feeling still bit worn out from the whole Forest of Death episode, he decided that a nice relaxing napping session on one of the balconies would be a good idea. I won't be caught making fun of that name again though, Forest of Death indeed. So he headed to one of the balconies. 1 hour later, he was still resting comfortably on a chair with Akai-chan curled up in a ball on top of his chest. He was currently idly fingering the jar of salve he'd gotten from Hinata. Man, this stuff was great. I wonder if Hinata even realizes how much this helped me. Hope she makes it through the forest though. Even without Orochimaru it was though going. Seeing her, Naruto Nichan looking thoughtful and fingering the jar given to him by that nice girl, Akai decided to start a conversation. Hinata was walking around the tower hoping to find Naruto. She really didn't know if she would have the courage to say anything again, but maybe Naruto would at least notice her and confirm that she hadn't dreamed the part where he'd asked her out on a date. Well, not a date really. We'll just be eating ramen together. Oh my god, that sounds so much like a date. She was suddenly snapped out of fantasy where her Naruto-kun dropped on his knees, and when she heard a soft, cutesy voice say, "Nay Naru-chan, are you really going to take that girl out for ramen?" She almost suffered a heart attack there and then. Some floozy was trying to dissuade her Naruto-kun from taking her out. The veins surrounding her eyes bulged as she activated her Byakugan to find Naruto-kun and the bitch that was obviously pestering him. Maybe it was that Ino girl who had been dragging him to the clothing store. What she saw stole her breath away. Naruto was lounging on a chair with Akai sitting on his chest, and there was no sign of the tramp. But who was speaking then? I'm sure I heard. With her Byakugan she saw Akai's mouth move. Nay Naru Onichan, do you like her? It's obvious that she likes you. Are you going to ask her to bear your pups? She didn't even see Naruto blush. She was so shocked that someone would have noticed her secret crush, and a fox no less. She gasped, wait a minute, that fox can speak. She considered running away. It had worked before but then noticed that Naruto and Akai were both staring at the balcony entrance with look that clearly said busted. Stealing her courage, she decided that it was time to tell Naruto-kun things. Naruto was indeed staring at the doorway with a feeling of dread, all the while berating himself for not paying more attention to his surroundings. Then he heard someone moving in the hallway and soon the said someone entered the balcony. Both Naruto and Hinata were blushing badly. Naruto because he was sure that Hinata had heard Akai bluntly asking if he was going to ask her to bear his pups, and Hinata, for well, she really blushed whenever she came to 100 yards of Naruto. They both spoke at the same time. Nay Hinata, Anyo Naruto-kun. Naruto motioned furiously and blurted out, ladies first. Twiddling her fingers and fighting the urge to run, Hinata began to stutter. Anyo, Naruto-kun, did Akai-chan speak? Gomen, it's so silly, couldn't happen. Her eyes widened when Akai hopped off Naruto's lap and softly walked next to her and jumped up to her arms. She still began to pet the adorable little kid who yapped softly to Naruto, who began to nod his head. Hinata almost dropped the kid when she heard the same soft voice from her arms say, please don't tell anyone that I can speak, and Naruto continue, Akai-chan is somewhat special, as am I for that matter. Now this is an official secret of Konoha, so you can't tell anyone about it, but, well, you see, the thing is that, he was interrupted by Hinata's almost inaudible whisper of, Kyuubi is sealed in you, which she breathed out clearly, if very quietly. Naruto almost fell from his chair. He was to say the least amazed and let it show too, so comical was his face that Hinata actually let loose a small giggle and blushed scarlet right afterwards. Regaining his senses, or at least some of them, the foxboy of Konoha managed to gasp out question as to exactly how had Hinata found out. This brought yet another session of finger twiddling and blushing from the girl. How can I tell Naruto-kun that I've been following him around? I'd sound like some weirdo stalker or something. Finally Naruto grew tired with the blushing and finger twiddling and firmly grabbed Hinata's hands, causing the shy Hyuga to swoon. Startled, he grabbed her before she hit the ground and quickly deposited her on the vacant chair. When Hinata regained her breathing, she tried to twiddle her fingers but found out that her hands were still being held by Naruto, who was peering at her face with a worried expression. Please Hinata, don't faint on me now, and if you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to. And I can understand if you don't want to go for that ramen after the exam either. Oh no, now Naruto-kun thinks I don't like him anymore, not that I blame him for such fears, poor Naruto-kun. She, yet again, noticed that she couldn't poke her fingers together, so gathering her courage she stuttered, Gomen Naruto-kun, I mean I don't care and I'd like to be your friend. Now she really would have liked to say girlfriend, instead of just friend, but as always her courage failed her. At least I'll be his friend, and maybe, just maybe, she suddenly saw it in her mind's eye. They were practicing together and she tripped and Naruto-kun was there to catch her, their faces almost touching. She could almost hear him saying, Hinata, Hinata, hey Hinata. She snapped out of the daydream to see Naruto waving one hand before her face. She blinked, then mournfully realized that Naruto had let go of her hand. Gomen Naruto-kun, I spaced out. She blushed again, realizing how close Naruto was and how confused he looked. Anyo, I saw you telling the Hokage's grandson about the thing, and Kurenai-sensei has been teaching me how to lip read, so I found out, and then I ran away because I was shocked. Gomen, she hung her head at yet another admission of her weakness. Naruto didn't know what to do or say. Obviously Hinata felt bad for being shocked when she found out. To further add to his confusion, he was now face to face with the only person of his own age group that knew his secret, and yet she didn't want to scream or hate him but to be his friend. He decided to do as Kyuubi instructed and gently lifted Hinata's chin upwards till she was looking him in the eyes. He then flashed his wide smile at her and said, Hey, don't worry about that Hinata, it's not like being shocked over something like that is bad or anything, and you aren't running away screaming either. But I have tons to tell you if you have the time. Badly blushing Hinata could only nod, and so Naruto launched into a long and amazing tale. Before Naruto, who was eagerly explaining everything that had happened since Wave Country, or Hinata, who was just as eager to hear about the exploits of her one and only love interest, noticed it was getting dark and Hinata's teammates, at Kiba's insistence, had come looking for her. Kiba naturally was furious when he saw what he considered his girl, and the stupid moron Naruto in such an intimate setting. It actually looked somewhat suspicious, a boy and a girl sitting side by side on a balcony that was facing a forest, and there was a sunset too. Luckily Shino, who said he wanted to stay outside for a moment, was there to prevent any bloodshed. Shyly waving goodbye, Hinata followed Kiba back inside with a happy bounce. Her Naruto-kun had been eagerly talking to her of all people. She blushed again and shot a last parting glance towards Naruto, who was still standing outside with Shino. Shino simply stood there watching. He didn't move or speak, and soon Naruto became uncomfortable under the silent eyes. He was just about to leave when Shino spoke up. So it was because of Kyuubi that we were all told to stay away from you. Sometimes we do stupid things out of fear. Did you know that I too grew up without friends because I'm of the Aburame clan? No one wanted to play with the icky bug boy. Still, I have to hand it to you. You had it much harder than I did. I at least had family. For the second time today, Naruto was not believing his ears. How many damn people know already? I mean, do I carry a sign that says, Kyuubi is sealed inside, please be quiet, or something? Sighing, he sat down and asked. And just how did you find out? And why are you telling me this? The bug user just shrugged. I have a bug placed on both of my teammates, and that bug just relayed it all to me, and I'm telling you because I don't think that you are a monster either. He turned to leave. Oh, and Kiba is in love with Hinata, who is in love with you, so watch your step. I'll try to keep him on a leash, so to speak, but you probably should avoid letting him see the two of you like he did today. It looked rather intimate. And if you are not going to act on this information, please let Hinata down easily. She really cares about you. With that, he left a stunned Naruto on the balcony. When he saw Hinata the next day, he made no mention of what Shino had told him. Hell, he wasn't even sure about how he felt about something like that himself. It wasn't unpleasant to think that someone loved you, but still, oh well, his ramen date with Hinata was still on, so he had plenty of time to think about it, and right now he needed to focus on the exam. Instead of talking about any romantic stuff, Naruto managed to coax Hinata into a nice sparring session, and was surprised with the level of skill she exhibited, and even more so when she apologized for not being better. For the next few days he regularly sparred with Hinata, and at her insistence, after she finally mustered the courage, told her more about his life. They'd gotten into a point where Hinata actually managed to speak without much of a stutter, albeit in a very tiny voice, and only blushed, stuttered noticeably, and or poked her fingers when her eyes met Naruto's. They were often joined by Lee, who had arrived at the tower on the third day. They were also watched by Kiba and Akamaru, who, to Kiba's dismay, really didn't watch Naruto but instead played around with Akai and generally spent time bonding with the fox when they were both petted profusely by Hinata. Naruto was also pretty sure that he'd seen Sasuke on occasion, skulking in the shadows with his Sharingan active and watching as they sparred, copying their techniques, which was the very reason he'd suggested that they only use the basic stuff. He'd also seen Gaara and his siblings, and the changes on their appearances were rather dramatic. Gaara's insomniac look had been passed on to his siblings Temari and Kankuro, who now looked like they hadn't slept a wink in days. Gaara, on the other hand, looked quite well rested, though there still were slight remnants of the black rings that surrounded his eyes. The smirking boy told Naruto that he was yet to tell the two about what had occurred over a week ago, and that his siblings still feared that Shukaku would suddenly devour his soul and come out unchecked. All in all, Gaara was in a good mood and behaved almost amiably towards the Leaf Genins when Naruto introduced them. Soon the 120 hours of the second exam had passed and all the genins who had made it to the tower were called to the central room. It was time for the third round, and some serious ass-kicking. They milled about, some slightly nervous while others radiated confidence. Naruto looked around and noticed that surprisingly few teams had made it to the tower in the time given. He himself included, there were only 21 people gathered in the large room. Actually, the only people he hadn't seen during his stay in the tower and the only new arrivals were Kabuto and his two teammates. 7 teams, we were cut down from 27 to just 7, that forest certainly lived up to its name. He also took note of the assembled Junin and the Hokage who began to explain the reasons behind the Chunin selection exams. Much to his discomfort, he also noticed Anko, who was watching him with a hungry, predatory gleam in her eyes, just like she had when she was licking his bloody cheek. He struggled to suppress the overwhelming urge to shudder. He tuned out the Hokage and concentrated instead on Guy and Kakashi, who had a much more interesting talk. He mentally snickered at Guy's reaction to Kakashi's innocent, "Huh? You said something," and began to plot out possible ways to use the same tactic on Sasuke. His focus snapped back to the old man who was about to begin explaining the rules for the third exam when a sickly-looking man with a bad cough interrupted and requested that he as a referee would be allowed to explain the rules and such. He then launched into an explanation as to how there were too many participants to make it and there was a need for a preliminary. Interrupted by several coughs, he said, those who are not feeling well enough to fight and those who feel like quitting, please come forward so we may begin the preliminaries immediately." There was a slight murmur that ran through the assembled genin. Naruto was, quite frankly, surprised when only Kabuto raised his hand to indicate that he would withdraw from the competition. Naruto began to loudly question as to why Kabuto would give up so easily and received an answer of, "I'm sorry Naruto-kun, but I'm all beat up and I haven't been able to hear with my left ear since that scuffle with the sound nins," which was something Naruto didn't quite believe. Thick Bros took the same hit, twice even, and his ears are working just fine. And for that beat up part, well, you look about as fresh as everyone else here. Humph. Maybe you are a 7th-time veteran because you lack guts. Without further interruptions, Kabuto was removed from the contest. Only 20 genins remained. Naruto watched carefully as Gecko Hayate, as the Junin had introduced himself, began to explain the rules of the preliminary matches. There was something about this Junin that didn't just add up. He looked as he had one leg in the grave already, and yet, that one is clever, I think. The cough is genuine but not the result of a disease or sickness, and the dying look he has is probably a genjutsu that makes him look sick. You already notice that he doesn't have the smell of sickness about him. This caused Naruto to pause. Smell of sickness? He asked silently, only to hear Kyuubi snort disdainfully. You will understand when you visit a hospital. Anyway, enough of this, kid, or you will miss the fun rules, like, there are no rules and such. He began to shiver with anticipation, like so many others, while some shivered in trepidation, when the scoreboard that would decide the matches began to roll through names. Naruto felt mildly annoyed that it had to be Sasuke Tem who got to fight in the first match. Hayate coughed. The first fight is between Akado Yoroi and Uchiha Sasuke. Are the contestants ready? When both indicated that they were, Hayate cleared his throat and said, well then, we'll begin the first match shortly, so would everyone except the 2 participants move to the upper level? As everyone began to walk towards the stairs, Kakashi brushed behind Sasuke and whispered, Sasuke, remember, that your own will is what partially keeps Orochimaru's curse in check. And if you activate that curse, the match will be instantly stopped and you will be placed under Anbu guard. This caused Sasuke to falter. They were again trying to limit his growth, but still, he didn't want to be removed from the contest until he had the chance to beat Naruto to a pulp. The Dobi deserved to be dropped down a few notches, and it was his job as the Rookie of the Year and his teammate to do it. Smirking confidently, he took a loose, ready stance and faced his opponent. Up in the stands, everyone had settled down to watch the match. Sakura was rather worried about her Sasuke-kun, who had been colder than usual after their encounter with Orochimaru. He'd been almost hostile when she tried to talk with him. Maybe we shouldn't have told about the bite, it was Sasuke-kun's business after all, and he is strong enough to know best himself. She sighed again, she was so confused. She believed in Sasuke, but on the other hand, the look of concern on Kakashi-sensei's face when Naruto had told about the incident had been noticeable, even with the mask. And then there was the seal that was, why am I doubting Sasuke-kun? He's one of us that has the best chance of coming a Chunin, isn't he? Not even Naruto can compete with him, can he? She shoved the doubt aside and began to cheer as Sasuke delivered the first blow. Down in the arena, Sasuke, though he was doing rather well, he'd cornered Yoroi using his superior speed to deflect several shuriken thrown at him and then ran in and grappled with him. Only to have Yoroi start draining his chakra reserves with some weird technique. Kicking him off to make some distance, Sasuke began to formulate a plan. Good thing he had been able to watch that weirdo Lee practice with Naruto. Flashing through several hand seals, he performed Kaden, Hosenka no Jutsu, Fire Style, Phoenix Flower Technique, and tossed in a few shurikens while blowing the small balls of flame towards Yoroi. Using the opportunity to attack the now distracted man, he quickly ducked under his guard and sent him flying with a swift kick to the chin. He then pushed himself up into air and under Yoroi's shadow and delivered a swift spin kick that Yoroi was able to block. Undaunted, he spun again and this time punched Yoroi and then punched him again, launching the genin towards the floor below. Just as they were about to land, Sasuke delivered a final spin kick and yelled out the name of his new attack, Shishi Renden. Lion Combo. Blood spurted from Yoroi's mouth as Sasuke stood up and dusted himself off and turned to flash a satisfied smirk towards Naruto. Chew on that, Dobi. The power of the Sharingan is something you definitely can't beat. It was quite amusing how you tried to keep me from gaining power after you noticed that I was watching your little training sessions. You should feel privileged that I would use you to gain power. He smirked again when he heard Hayate declare him as the winner of the first match and the first one to pass the prelims. Feeling satisfied, he headed towards the stairs to watch the rest of the matches. I just hope the Dobi draws someone weak so he'll win. I so want to put him to his place in front of a large audience. Up in the stands, Naruto was seething. So Sasuke-tem had been able to copy Lee's prized technique before Naruto had noticed him skulking about. He really didn't mind using Sharingan or his own Shinkugan to break down and copy techniques from the enemy, but somehow it just felt wrong that Sasuke would sneak in and steal a technique that had taken Lee countless of hours of hard work to achieve. He shook his head in disgust at Sasuke's self-satisfied look and the way several unnamed fangirls fawned at him as if he'd done something marvelous. I just hope I get to fight him in the third exam. He needs to be dropped down a few pegs, no strike that few dozen pegs. Lee was having similar thoughts. He felt himself somehow slighted, not because Sasuke had copied the initial stage of his technique but because the way he'd done it. Lee knew that Naruto was able to perform Konoha Senpu perfectly because of his bloodline limit, but he didn't care. Naruto had worked hard to achieve that level of skill, maybe not hard as he had himself, but still. He sighed in a tired tone. Uchiha Sasuke, your Sharingan is truly fearsome, but the way you use it is an affront to those who work hard. To copy your enemy's techniques is one thing, to spy on your comrades is another. Their musings and the squeals of delight from Sasuke fan club, namely Ino and Sakura, were cut short when the names of the next contestants appeared on the scoreboard. Zaku Abumi vs. Aburame Shino. Naruto watched as Shino made his way down the stairs towards the arena and pondered the mystery that was this silent boy. Shino was the second person on his own age group that knew about the Kyuubi, but still, he was friendly enough but about as silent as a grave. Seriously, he'd said more on their initial meeting than he'd said during the rest of the time they'd spent together. Naruto sighed as he remembered all that the bug user had said to him on the balcony and again became keenly aware of the slight scent of jasmine that had haunted him the past 3 days. Shaking his head clear of any thoughts not concerning the preliminaries, he tried, with partial success, to focus on the fights. Down on the arena, Shino had already began his match with Zaku and had managed to corner him with a swarm of Kikai bugs and forced Zaku to uncover his second arm. Shino's expression didn't change when Zaku's other arm blew off and the other was torn apart when he tried to use his Zankuaha, decapitating air wave, to blow away the bugs and Shino. When the boy was declared winner and made his way up to the stands, Naruto could only gape at what he surmised was the most collected person he'd ever seen. He even shivered slightly at the thought of being surrounded by a large swarm of chakra-eating bugs, but was reassured by Kyuubi, who was certain that the bugs would stand no chance against their foxfire. The next match was called and it was to be between Gaara's brother Kankuro and Kabuto's teammate Tsurugi Masumi. The match seemed to end before it even got properly started when the stretchy leaf genin broke Kankuro's neck. Kankuro, in response, turned his head completely around and was revealed to be a puppet that proceeded to squeeze the consciousness out of other contestant. After being declared winner, he collected his puppet Karasu and joined the rest of his team on the balcony. Naruto's hopes of getting to fight on the next round were dashed when the scoreboard announced the next matchup. He raised an eyebrow when he read the names of Haruno Sakura and Yamanaka Ino on the board. Two of the scariest girls I know. I wonder if Sakura-chan is able to win against Ino. The girls in question were descending the stairs together, all the while staring lightning bolts at each other. The fight was a long one. They exchanged blow for blow, insult for insult, until finally Ino caught Sakura with her Shintention no Jutsu, mind-body switch technique, only to be foiled by the raging inner Sakura, who, because of Naruto's cheers, reared her very scary head and forced Ino, to everyone's amazement, out from Sakura's mind. By now both Sakura and Ino were exhausted and both decided to make a last-ditch attempt to beat the other down. They both succeeded in quite a dramatic double KO. While Naruto and Team 10 were making checkups on Sakura and Ino, Lee was pumping his fists in the air, cheering wildly at Tenten, who was matched up against Temari. Despite the sheer volume of both cheers and throwing weapons summoned, Tenten was losing badly against the blonde Kunoichi from Sunagaku. After a spectacular shower of sharp projectiles got yet again deflected, Temari seemed simply to vanish, only to reappear and create a miniature tornado that trapped poor Tenten in it. The fight ended when Temari caught the falling girl with her folded fan, making her back arch into an unhealthy angle. After she was declared winner, Temari threw Tenten towards to a wall, only to have her caught by Lee, who jumped to grab his fallen teammate. Temari's tough girl exterior crumbled slightly when Naruto jumped down to restrain Lee from attacking her. While staring her with those damnable red eyes, she shivered when she remembered Gaara's reaction to the loud blonde. He seems to care about his fellow genins, maybe I shouldn't piss him off. The consequences might be unpleasant if I have to face him in the third exam. Shrugging to himself, Hayate announced the next match. Will Nara Shikamaru and Kin Suchi please step down so that we can begin the sixth match? Naruto yawned as he watched Shikamaru and the sound girl make their way down to the arena. He was quite frankly bored by all this waiting, and none of Kyuubi's patience is a virtue kit comments really helped. Sasuke was boring too. He kept his eyes on the arena and only scoffed at the level of skill that these inferior ones exhibited. Only people he was looking forward to seeing were Lee, Gaara and Neji, and the way things were going, one of them would fight, and when he predicted, against Naruto, thusly robbing him the chance to humiliate the Dobi himself. Naruto didn't really care anymore. All his previous boredom had been blown away when Shikamaru used his Kujumain no Jutsu, shadow bind technique, and knocked Kin out by smashing her head to the wall. Well, that really didn't affect his boredom, but the subsequent announcement of the seventh match. It was his turn to fight. Yush. Finally, it's my turn to fight. I'll be facing Kiba, This might get interesting if what Shino said about him is true, and it is judging by how he's been acting when I'm around Hinata. Smiling to himself, he decided to aggravate the dog boy further and walked right to Hinata, where he stopped for a moment before going down. Hey Hinata, hold Akai-chan for a while would you? I don't want to take her down to the fight because she's still so young. He then handed the irate kit to the now blushing Hinata and cast a meaningful glance at Kiba before heading down to the arena. When he got down to the arena, Kiba was already waiting, and positively brimming with confidence. His gloating comment of, "Lucky aren't we Akamaru, with that loser as our opponent it's like we've already won," was met with a slightly hesitant bark from Akamaru, who had actually smelled the lingering remnants of Naruto's other chakra from when he'd been demonstrating it to Hinata in private. Despite of his pet's lack of enthusiasm, Kiba continued gloating over his easy victory, only to be interrupted by the now fuming Naruto. "Shut the hell up. And don't bring that puppy of yours to the fight, he'll just get in the way." Now it was Kiba's turn to fume. "You idiot, Akamaru is going to fight with me, he's a fully trained ninja animal after all." This comment only made Naruto to smile, then point an accusing finger at Kiba. "Yeah well, a loser like you would need all the help he can get so." Kiba was now beyond furious. Here was the guy who'd been the laughing stock of the academy, standing before him acting all though. And to add to the incentive to beat him up real bad was the fact that he'd begun to suspect that Hinata-chan might actually like the dork for real. He ordered Akamaru to stand down and said, "Ha, acting all though are you? I'll fight you alone, and because I feel bad for you I'll even end it with one hit." His confidence grew with every word until he noticed that Naruto didn't seem to be least bit affected and that his eyes turned from their usual blue to rather unnerving crimson. Shrugging it off as some weird intimidation trick or whatever, he made a few hand seals and whispered, "Giju Ninpu, Shikyaku no Jutsu. Beast mimicry, 4 legs." He then fell on all fours and with amazing speed leapt towards Naruto, who had almost no time to react, and slammed his elbow in the blonde's gut, hurling him backwards like a sack of potatoes. Smirking, he stood up and said, "He won't be getting up anytime soon, Mr. Examiner." While eyeing the spectators and their reactions. To his dismay, Hinata was looking somewhat sad, and while he could hear Shikamaru's, "Just as I thought," something drew his attention back to Hinata's now happy face. Kiba too began to smile. Obviously Hinata had noticed that Naruto was nothing loser and not worth anyone's, least of all her, time. This fantasy was proven wrong by determined, "Don't underestimate me, dog boy." Coming from his downed victim who was supposed to be out cold. Naruto was standing there staring at Kiba, who had shock written on his face. "Damn, that hurt. He hits like a damn jackhammer. And he's fast too." Grinning confidently to Kiba, who was now telling him to drop the tough guy act, he wiped some blood from the corner of his mouth and said, "I just let you hit me to test your strength. It was pretty pathetic, so really it's you who should drop the tough guy act. You know, use your puppy too or whatever." Naruto watched as his words hit home, making Kiba quiver with rage, and then fell into a defensive stance. Kiba held the speed advantage unless he were to drop the genjutsu from his bracers, and that was something he wanted to keep a secret as long as possible. Kiba meanwhile had formulated a plan. Grabbing few smoke bombs, he yelled at Akamaru and charged. Naruto watched the approaching pair carefully. "Smoke bombs? Hey, this should be interesting." Soon enough Kiba got into range and threw the small orbs, causing a large cloud of smoke to obscure the area. Inside the smoke, Naruto was easily dodging the first few attacks that came his way. "This is too easy. I would be beaten up badly if it wasn't for my senses though, but still, where's that damn mutt?" Soon enough he had a fix on Akamaru's location and a pretty good idea on Kiba's plan. Deciding to play along, he dashed out of the smoke towards the waiting dog. Several barks, yells of pain and general sounds of combat later, the smoke cleared to reveal an unconscious Naruto and Akamaru, who was happily wagging his tail. Kiba let out a yell of victory and extended his arms to welcome the ecstatic dog, only to have the said animal sink its rather sharp teeth into his arm. His confusion was escalated when Akamaru said in a cheery voice, "You fell for it," and then growled loudly as he poofed into smiling Naruto, who immediately began to spit out in disgust. "Blech, gross Kiba, don't you ever wash that coat of yours, sheesh, tastes like a rotten dog." Up in the stands everyone was watching in stunned silence. Asuma and Kurenai, the Junin instructors of teams 8 and 10, were both thinking, what the hell did you do to that boy, the dead last of the academy, Kakashi? The Junins weren't the only ones impressed though, and their thoughts were best summarized by Hinata's very quiet, "Naruto-kun, you're great." Even though it was all buried under Sakura's very loud, "You're great, Naruto." Sasuke just scoffed at the cheap tricks Naruto was pulling, while Neji found it mildly amusing that Naruto had the gall to complain about taste after biting someone. Back at the arena, Kiba tossed a soldier pill to Akamaru, who was being held by Naruto's clone. The small, white and harmless-looking dog suddenly turned into a red and definitely lot less harmless-looking beast that, after effectively destroying the clone holding him, jumped on Kiba's back. Several hand seals later, Kiba yelled, "Yiju Ninpu Jujin Bunshin." Beast mimicry, beast human clone, causing them both to be covered in smoke. Naruto's eyes narrowed and he pulled into even tighter defensive stance, when the smoke cleared, revealing two identical beast Kibas that immediately charged forward. He was in a tight spot and he knew it, dodging and parrying blows that rained from Kiba and the Kiba-like Akamaru. Naruto was forced into a position where he was vulnerable. Smelling victory, Kiba and Akamaru charged forward while Kiba yelled, "Gatsuga, double piercing fang," and both of them turned into veritable drills that both hit Naruto dead on. The blonde in question fell to the ground with an audible thud. "You always go on and on about becoming the Hokage. Well, I'll tell you something, a loser like you can never be Hokage, but hey, don't feel bad, I'll become the Hokage for you." Turning towards the referee, he continued, "He's finished, no way in hell." He never got the chance to finish what he was about to say when Naruto, who was sprawled on the floor, stood up shakily and flashed a confident grin. "If you are going to compete with me for the title of the Hokage, you should know that you'll be the underdog." Pulling himself to yet another defensive stance, he dodged the Gatsuga again. "He's getting careless, there was no preparation this time, and now that I've seen that one, I won't fall for it again. I'm still at a disadvantage though, I need to get rid of the damn mud, but how?" He smiled deviously while dodging yet another Gatsuga attack and formed a few hand seals to perform a henge that made him an exact Kiba look-alike. Kiba sniffed the air tentatively. There were two exact copies of himself, but he still had the advantage. There, that one smelled strongly of fox. He swung his fist with all his might and connected squarely at the fake, causing him to fly backwards and land in a roll. There was a puff of smoke that revealed Akamaru. Eyes widening, he turned around in a rush and smashed his fist into what had to be Naruto, only to see the Jujin Bunshin dissolve into an unconscious Akamaru. Turning around totally baffled, he was rewarded with a sight of cloud of smoke that cleared to reveal a grinning blonde who said in a taunting voice, "Think before using a jutsu or it will be used against you. And when in doubt, trust your nose, ne Kiba-kun. Or should I call you Baka-kun?" Up in the balcony, Kakashi sweat dropped. He certainly is something else, using my lines like that. Well, at least he pissed him off. Kiba was livid. The class failure that was supposed to be a pushover had foiled him in every turn. Forcing himself to calm down by biting his own hand, he began to plan a strategy. "I'm faster and stronger than he is, so I'll just keep on wearing him down. I'll get a hit in eventually and then it's all over." He smirked, regained his calm, at Naruto, who was now holding 4 shuriken in his hands. "Hey, you think something so basic is going to work against me?" Naruto just shook his head and smiled. "I'm going to try out my new special technique on you. Prepare to get payback for those Gatsugas. They hurt like hell." At that, he threw 3 of the shurikens and a moment later the last shuriken Kiba, like everyone else, was baffled at this odd behavior until he heard poofs from behind him. Turning around in a flash, he now stood face to face with three cage buncheons. It was too late, he realized, when there was one final poof right behind him and then fist connected with his head. With a loud yell of, "You!" the first clone batted him towards the remaining three while the real Naruto used the first clone as a springboard. Then the remaining three clones kicked him into air yelling, "Uzumaki," where he met the real Naruto's heel that connected to his skull, sending him to the hard floor below. Naruto Renden, Uzumaki Naruto combo, duh. Naruto stood ready in case Kiba would still somehow recover from the beating he'd received. When he didn't and Hayate declared Naruto winner, he turned his gaze towards Sasuke. With a flippant salute that clearly said, "You aren't the only one who can copy stuff and pass it off as their own." A message that Sasuke seemed to understand, judging by his darkening countenance. Naruto headed towards the stairs. He walked over to the awestruck Hinata and collected his pet fox while still admiring the power of the healing salve he'd gotten from her. Flashing her a dazzling smile, he said, "Nay Hinata, this stuff is really great. I mean, it's closing my wounds like nothing I've ever seen." This naturally brought out a wave of blushing that caused the nearby Neji scoff at his weak cousin. For some reason, the announcement of the next match brought a cold knot into Naruto's stomach. He watched with certain amount of trepidation as Hinata was matched against her cousin Neji. A knot that grew tighter and colder when Lee snuck up to him and whispered, "Judging from what I saw when you sparred with her, Hinata is very good, but Neji is the greatest genius born in their clan in the last 100 years. And he holds a grudge against the main house because he is from the branch house." This could get ugly. Down at the arena, Neji was berating Hinata, telling her how she was worthless, weak and unskilled. That didn't quite bury the knot in Naruto's stomach, but it certainly made him feel angry. He'd used his Shinkugan to analyze Hinata's Juken form and had found out that her form was nearly flawless without any major gaps in the defense or in the offense. Hinata only had problems with her confidence, and that bastard Neji was attacking just that. He narrowed his eyes and bellowed, "Stop pretending like you know something, you bastard. Hinata, don't listen to that moron. Just beat the shit out of him and shove that superior smirk of his so far up his ass that he can observe it whenever he opens his mouth in front of a mirror." Deep in his mind, Kyuubi giggled. So much for the subtleties. Seems to have worked though. I swear being sealed in the kidling doesn't get boring, and indeed it had worked. Hinata collected herself after the loud encouragement from her personal idol, activated her Byakugan and dropped into a Juken stance. "Come Neji Nisan, let us fight." Neji was somewhere between pleased and annoyed because his weak cousin hadn't given up. It would have been delightful to humiliate a member of the main house by scaring her into forfeiting, but it would be almost as delightful to beat one into hospital, preferably into the morgue. He too took a Juken stance and the battle was joined. Up on the balcony, Naruto was watching with growing concern. While it did seem that Hinata was holding the upper hand after her determination had been lit by little encouragement, his eyes told him that Neji was actually toying with Hinata. He winced when Neji landed 2 hits on Hinata's chest, causing her to spit out blood. Hinata then tried to strike Neji only to be stuck in the arm for her efforts. Neji then slammed his hand into her chest again with enough force to send her sprawling on the ground. He looked down at his weak cousin who was coughing blood on the ground and said in a scornful tone, "Hinata-sama, this is the difference in our strength, the difference between elite and loser." Forfeit. Neji smiled to himself. This was indeed quite pleasurable. He narrowed his eyes slightly at the sight of Hinata, who was slowly standing up, and wetted his lips in anticipation to hear a submission from a member of the main house. His eyes narrowed even more and his face turned into a scowl when Hinata finally stood up and said, "No, I don't go back on my word, it's my Nindo." Hinata, her eyes once more pulsing with the Byakugan, charged forward and challenged Neji in combat again, only to be hit repeatedly by Neji. Naruto, whose anger was beginning to spike, began to inch closer to Hinata's sensei. There was a pattern behind those hits. He's trying to kill or at least severely wound Hinata. You have put an end to this. Those strikes are all aimed to non-vital organs, but the combined effect of the damages could be fatal. As he said the words, he could feel Kyuubi's anger growing as well. The seal in his stomach began to slowly leak out bits of Kyuubi's chakra, alerting most of the Junins and incidentally the smirking Neji. On the arena, Neji was happily smirking at Hinata, who was struggling to get back on her feet. He'd hit multiple organs with the Jukin. None of the hits were lethal, but accidents did happen. His smirk waned when he felt a stab of intense anger and killer intent that was rolling from the balcony. Without turning his eyes, he observed the loudmouth blonde, or what should have been him. Instead of the blonde, there was something else, something that actually was slightly scaring. He was Hyuga Neji. He didn't get scared, ever, so instead he got angry and directed the anger to where he felt it was due, to his cousin. Deciding to put an end to this charade, he charged forward, ignoring the yell of, "Neji-kun, the match is over." From Hayate, only to be stopped by no less than 4 Junin. Behind the Junins, Hinata suddenly buckled over, coughing out more blood. With a loud yell of, "Hinata!" Naruto jumped over the railing and hurried to the fallen girl. They locked eyes for a second and her eyes seemed to say, "See, Naruto-kun, I can be strong." Before Hinata's eyes rolled over and she slipped into unconsciousness. Naruto quickly flashed through a few hand seals to activate the only medical jutsu he knew. It wasn't much, designed to be used as a first aid on minor wounds and such, but still he'd read on the instructions that its power was dependent on the amount of chakra the user would expend. Yelling for someone to get the damn medic team there faster, he pumped out vast amounts of chakra into his hand that he held over the spots that Neji had hit. He didn't know exactly how much good he'd done or how long he'd been doing it when the medic team finally arrived. Letting the professionals take over, he suppressed yet another surge of anger that was coming from. He really didn't even know whether it was from Kyuubi or himself, and turned to face the pleased-looking Neji. "Hey loser, cut the pointless cheering on other losers and understand that you are never going to be more than just that, a loser." That did it. The bastard was going down, hard. Naruto began to rush towards Neji only to be intercepted by Lee. "Naruto-kun, I understand why you would want to beat him up." He made a face towards the still smirking Hyuga, "And I completely agree with you, but still you should wait till you get a chance to fight him in a match, not in a brawl like this." Sensing that Naruto had calmed somewhat, he let go of the blonde. "And I too want to fight Neji, Naruto-kun, but should you be his opponent in the finals, there will be no hard feelings. It would somehow be more fitting should it be you." Naruto stared at Neji, his eyes never leaving him. He reached down to a pool of blood that was on the ground. Bringing his bloody hand up to eye level, he channeled chakra into his fingernails, making them grow into claws, and then made a fist, causing Hinata's blood and the blood that was flowing from his punctured palm to drip on the ground. "You are going down." With a final glare, he turned and stomped towards the stairs, leaving the openly amused Neji behind. Up where the Sand siblings were, Kankuro grinned at Naruto's performance. "He's so clueless that it's funny. He hasn't noticed the difference in their ability." This caused Gaara to turn his eyes on Kankuro. He was lucky the green-clad ninja was there to stop him. He said, making Kankuro nod. "That Neji guy was holding back. The blonde sure got lucky." Gaara only stared at the scoreboard that announced that he was to fight against Rock Lee next. Just before he vanished in a whirl of sand, he said, "He wasn't the lucky one." Leaving behind a slightly nervous Kankuro, he couldn't mean that it was the white-eyed guy who. Down in the arena, Lee was furiously attacking Gaara only to have his attacks meet an impregnable defense formed by moving sand. Forced into defense by what seemed to be hands made of sand, he did several back flips and finally vaulted himself on top of the monument of seals. There was a moment of silence, while the two combatants stared at each other, that was broken by Guy's enthusiastic, "Lee, take them off." Lee looked confused. "But Guy-sensei, That's only allowed when I'm protecting precious people. His confusion turned to a look of glee when Guy flashed his nice guy pose and yelled, "It's all right, Lee. I'll allow it." With an expectant look, almost like a small child on Christmas Eve, he rolled down his orange leg covers and unstrapped two set of weights that covered his shins and let them fall. Yush. Now I can move like the spirit of youth. Naruto only rolled his eyes. He knew the insane weights that Lee walked around with and was probably the only one who was not surprised at the massive cloud of dust and mortar that blew upwards when the weights hit the ground. Nor was he surprised when Lee seemed to blur out of existence only to reappear behind Gaara to give first blow in a flurry of blows that eventually smashed through his ultimate defense. Temari and Kankuro were in shock. No one had ever broken through Gaara's sand before and forced him to use the Suna no Yoroi, armor of sand, but they weren't the only ones. Gaara himself was rather shocked at the speed and strength that Lee was using. Lee was shocked as well. With that moving sand and the sand armor that was covering Gaara's skin, there was no way he'd be able to deal enough damage to win before he would run out of steam. He shot a questioning glance at Guy, who nodded imperceptibly, making Lee smile as he began to untie the bandages covering his arms. At this point Naruto was getting very interested. He was about to witness the Omet Renge, initial lotus, that he'd heard Lee and Guy talk about. And there it was. With a blinding speed, Lee made several circles around Gaara and then ducked under his guard to kick him from below, only to follow him into the air where he wrapped his bandages around Gaara. The effect was quite spectacular as Gaara was drilled half a meter into the ground and began to crumble, revealing that Lee had wasted his move on a Suna Bunshin. Now Lee was on the defensive. His body hurt all over from using the Renge, and all he could do, and even that barely, was dodge the jets of sand that would have knocked him unconscious or worse. Gaara, on the other hand, tasted victory and was preparing for a final strike that would make him win when Lee suddenly rolled away without the slightest hint of pain. Up in the balcony, Kakashi and Guy were in a heated conversation about the 8 celestial gates, something that Naruto decided he would ask about later. Lee grew stronger by the moment, small pebbles starting to rise from the ground around him, and then he was off. Faster than the eye could follow, he kicked Gaara into air again, then jumped after him. To a casual observer it seemed as if Gaara was bounced around by invisible hands. Hit after hit rained on him from the furious Lee, who was preparing for a final strike just as the muscles in his hands ceased to function. Ignoring the pain, he forced the 5th gate to open and delivered a jarring blow to Gaara, propelling him downwards. Lee then pulled on his bandages to pull Gaara upwards like a yo-yo while preparing to perform the Ura Renge, Extreme Lotus. His fist made contact with Gaara and smashed him to the ground and sending Lee hurling to the other end of the arena. Much to the dismay of Guy and to amazement of most everyone else, Gaara wasn't finished yet. His sand began to creep towards Lee and then suddenly wrapped itself around his spandex-covered arm and leg. It stopped there though as Gaara paused. Images of his painful past flashed through his mind and the sand moved forward again, then stopped. Gaara dismissed the memories of Shukaku's insane whispers that demanded he feed his opponents to the sand. There were no whispers anymore, no need to kill to silence the unquenchable thirst that was in Shukaku. True, he had killed the rain ninjas, without mercy or hesitation, but they had demanded that they have his scroll, and his sister in exchange for escape. His eyes focused on Lee as more images flashed through his mind, images of Naruto smiling to Lee, who was pumping his fist in the air and yelling, "Flames of youth will unite our villages in peace." He had made his decision and the sand obeyed it, wrapping itself around the boy. Gaara stood up and said, "Referee, it's over, he is unable to fight anymore." Then he, almost carefully, used his sand to place the unconscious taijutsu master on the ground. As he let the sand flow back into the gourd, his eyes widened. Despite his injuries, Lee was there standing in his signature ready position. Is he even human? I clearly heard his muscles snap. Any further deliberations into the issue were cut off by Guy's arrival, who declared that it was over and that Lee was already unconscious. Gaara turned away after he was declared winner and returned to the balcony offering only a commanding, "Shut up," to all the questions that were directed at him by his siblings and Baki. The 10th and final fight soon began between Akimichi Choji and Dosu Kinuta. The preliminaries came to an end with a fight that was somewhat anticlimactic after the showdown between Gaara and Lee, as Dosu easily claimed victory by directing his sound waves through Choji's body and into his eardrums, making him lose consciousness. The Hokage began by congratulating all those who had passed and proceeded to explain that they now had a month to recover, train and to devise strategies against their opponents. As for the opponents, after a series of drawing lots, the fight schedule was established. To his delight, Naruto drew 1 while Neji drew 2, meaning that they had the first fight. Other pairs were Sasuke and Gaara, Kankuro and Shino, Shikamaru and Dosu, with Tamari fighting against the winner of that match. With that and an explanation as to how they could all become Chunin, or that maybe none of them would become Chunin, the Hokage dismissed them for a month's time. Before he could even ask, Kakashi approached Naruto as they stood outside training area 44. "So Naruto, congratulations on passing the prelims. I'm going to leave several scrolls at your for you to study during this month." That caused Naruto's smile to falter. He'd really been hoping that Kakashi, whom he considered to be about the best ninja around, would have taken charge of his training. Seeing this, Kakashi quickly continued, "The Hokage has asked that I train Sasuke, as I am the only Sharingan user in the village. It would make sense. The Hokage also said he has arranged another teacher for you. Your father's old sensei Jiraiya, who was also Orochimaru's old teammate. You are to meet him at the Konoha Hot Spring Resort tomorrow after lunch. He's an old man with spiky white hair. You can't miss him." He gave Naruto a slight push. "I suggest that you rest for today, and I think it would be nice to visit your sparring partner in the hospital just to see how he's doing. Him and maybe someone else too." Somehow the slight suggestiveness of his tone and the way his visible eye cringed caused Naruto to feel quite hot and uncomfortable. Kakashi's eye shone with suppressed mirth. "Anyway, I'll leave you some scrolls that I think might come handy when you go against the Hyuga boy. Remember, he's no pushover, so train hard and all that. Well, see you in a month." Naruto watched with mixed emotions as his uncle vanished in a cloud of smoke after a final wave of hand. As he made his way home for the first time in 5 days, he pondered about what Kakashi had just said. I guess he's right about that whole Sharingan thing, though it still kinda sucks to be referred to someone else. On the other hand, he was father's sensei and one of the Sannin, just like that snake bastard, so that would mean that he's really strong too. Grumbling, he absently stroked Akai-chan while immersed in his own thoughts. When they got back to Naruto's apartment, they cleaned up and headed out for some celebratory ramen at Ichiraku's. 20-some bowls of ramen later, Naruto decided that he would do as Kakashi had instructed and visit the hospital. He was anxious to know exactly how badly both Lee and Hinata had gotten hurt. First thing he saw when he arrived at the hospital was Guy-sensei, who immediately ran up to his part-time pupil and began to yell, "Ah, Naruto-kun, it pleases me greatly to see that you take the time visit your fallen comrade despite burning passion for training that you must feel is needed to fulfill your youthful potential." After few moments and several rather harsh glares from the nurses, he calmed down enough to explain in plain words that Lee was expected to make a full recovery. He had pulled or torn muscles all over his body and there were small fractures on many of his bones, but still, Guy sighed, the flames of youth are strong in this one and thusly he will make most efficient recovery. They expect him to be up to norm in 1 month, but I say he'll be back to it in 2 weeks, and if he's not, I'll run around Konoha 500 times, and if I can't do that, all Naruto tuned the rest out. He knew from experience that only a blatant interruption could stop Guy, or Lee for that matter, when they went on their rants. He bid the starry-eyed Guy goodbye and went to front desk to find out where Hinata was taken. After receiving a room number, he went to find the said room. When he entered the room, there was no one else there beside Hinata, so he pulled out a chair and sat next to her bed. After a moment of awkward silence, he cleared his throat and pulled out a kitsune plushie that he'd brought on Akai's insistence, and placed it under Hinata's arm. He then looked from her to Akai to the plushie and then to Hinata again and shook his head. Damn it, why is this so hard? I mean, I speak to girls every day and she's not even awake for Cammy's sake. Could it be that No, I will not think about that stuff until I'm done with the damn exam. He cleared his throat again and then said, well Hinata, you did really well out there and Akai wanted you to have the plushie so that you could pet it in her stead and stuff, so I'll be going now I guess, and we're still on for the ramen, right? I mean, well, I'll be back when you are feeling better and stuff, so bye. Acting as on instinct, he reached out with his hand and slightly touched Hinata on the cheek, and then realizing what he'd just done quickly pulled the hand away and blushed deep crimson. Phew, good thing nobody saw that one. Whatever possessed me to do it in the first place? Throwing a dark curse at Kyubi, who was now rolling around in barely concealed fits of laughter, he turned, stood up and walked to the door, which suddenly opened, smacking him squarely on the face. After he regained his senses, he came face to face with Hinata's Junin instructor Yuhi Kurenai and her teammate Shino. Seeing an opportunity to gain more info on Hinata's state, he asked, how is she? I mean, she's sleeping and all, and there are none of those weird machines they keep on really sick people on TV. What happened next was something he really didn't see coming. Kurenai simply grabbed him in a hug and whispered a heartfelt, thank you, into his ear. When Kurenai finally let go of the confused fox boy, she began to explain. The medics said that she'd suffered major trauma on most of her internal organs. The combined effect would have been fatal, or the very least very severe, had she not received extensive first aid on the spot. She locked her red eyes with Naruto's. You may very well have saved her life with that jutsu of yours, and for that you have my gratitude. Naruto cringed when he heard the words, then his face set in a determined mask. So that bastard Neji was really trying to kill her. All the more reason to whip his lily ass all over the stadium. He motioned towards the sleeping Hinata. So when is she expected to wake up, and will she be alright, and exactly when will she be alright? There was some deeper undercurrent in his voice that apparently was not missed by the red-eyed Junin. She's expected to wake up later this evening or sometime during the night, and she should be out of the hospital in a week, or sooner. If you want to visit her, then why don't you drop by tomorrow around lunchtime? I'm sure she could use the company and maybe something different from the hospital food, but that's just a suggestion. She smiled prettily at Naruto, who was now blushing slightly. Now off you go. You have your own training to think about, I'm certain, and congratulations on passing the exam, by the way. She ushered Naruto out from the room and to the hallway, where he was soon joined by Shino, who simply offered his hand and said, I thank you also, she's a good person. With that, the bug user turned to leave but was stopped by Naruto, who was already formulating a plan and needed some information. Shino paused to consider Naruto's request and decided that it was worth the time it would take. Before parting ways with him, Shino said one last thing. I'm sure Kiba will feel thankful as well. As for the other matter, I'll speak with him. Gaara was staring at the full moon. Shukaku was always most active during this time, but now, this was the first time in his life that he was able to look at the moon and not feel the desire to kill things. He was actually enjoying his very first moon viewing when the sound Nin Dosu came to interrupt. After the sound, Nin prattled something about trying to kill him in his sleep and the need to eliminate him so that he would have a better chance of fighting the Uchiha. He was growing bored. You know, you are sort of lucky. He's sealed now. He used to get so bloodthirsty during full moon, but now, you only have to deal with me. There was a sudden wave of sand that engulfed the sound Nin, and a muffled cry followed by a spurt of blood when Gaara's sand crushed the poor bastard. Moron, Shukaku might not make me kill things, but I still don't like assassins, much less sound assassins. He was unaware of the two men watching him. So that's the extent of his capabilities. Or should I say that that's the extent of his capabilities unless it comes out correct. And don't worry about Kinuda. He served his purpose and wasn't all that useful anymore. Hayate perked his ears. There was the Sand Junin Baki talking to Kabuto, a leaf genin who was to be arrested on suspicion of treason. He listened intently as the two men talked about a plan to attack Kohona, only to gasp slightly when he heard Baki declare, "I'll take care of the eavesdropper, it's only one rat there, so no problem." The two Junin faced off, and after a conceding, my mister Examiner, what are you doing here all alone? From Baki, Hayate launched his attack after performing a few seals and yelling out, "Mikazuki no Mai, Dance of the Crescent Moon." An attack that did connect but didn't quite cause the effect it was supposed to, as Baki only smiled. Very surprising to master such a move on so young age, but your blade can be stopped while a blade of wind can't. K's no Yeba, Hayate saw it coming. So, it ends here. Then there was moment of blackness, then he realized something. Sand. There's a wall of sand in front of me, what the hell? He quickly and cautiously navigated around the wall of sand only to see Baki's head, with his mouth covered, sticking out from a cocoon of sand. He whirled about when there was a voice that said, "I believe Baki would tell you most interesting things if you were to question him." Looking towards a nearby roof, he saw the sand boy, Gaara, smirking and holding his hand towards Baki. "I wish to leave the service of Kazekage-sama, and join the ranks of your leaf genin if possible." It was nearly lunchtime the following day, and Naruto was balancing several takeout bowls of miso and beef ramen along with a bag that held several canned beverages and an additional bag of special treat he'd gotten. He was almost at Hinata's room when he heard a male voice stating, "You are weak, daughter. To lose in a fight to a member of the branch house is inexcusable." The voice and the message that the voice conveyed reminded him so much of Neji that he almost dropped the foodstuffs he was lugging, almost. Taking a deep breath, he tried to calm himself, an act that was almost impossible as the male in Hinata's room continued to berate her, calling her worthless and the like. Deciding to take Kyuubi's advice, she was talking his ear off really. He feigned ignorance of any other visitors and kicked the door open, secretly hoping to hit the offending male with it, and burst into the room. He heard Kyuubi making a small snort of amusement when he observed a pale-eyed man, obviously Hinata's father, whirl around in amazement at such a blatant intrusion. Pointedly ignoring the man, he waved cheerfully at Hinata. "Oi Hinata, good to see you awake and all. You had us all worried there for a moment. Anyway, I got you some ramen and stuff to make you feel better. I mean, hospital food has a certain reputation." Placing his baggage on a nearby table, he noticed that Hiyashi, as he knew Hinata's father was called, was growing quite impatient from being ignored. Paying the man no heed, he helped Akai-chan from her pouch onto Hinata's bed, where she was promptly placed in a small embrace. Joining, he noted, the kitsune plushie he'd brought the day before. Turning around, he acted as he hadn't even noticed Hiyashi before this. "Ah, Gomen Hiyashi-sama, I didn't realize you were there." He immediately disliked the man. Not only did he sound like Neji, but he even had the same superior, "I'm better than you, so you are nothing to me," look on his face. "I brought some ramen, but I'm afraid there's not enough for all of us, so if you'll excuse us." That brought a muffled squeak from Hinata and caused Hiyashi's eyes to narrow visibly. Now Naruto really wasn't sure why Kyuubi thought it was a good idea to outrageously piss off the guy, but he was enjoying himself, so he really didn't care. Hiyashi used the moment of silence to deal with this impudent commoner. "It's you who should excuse us, I was just talking with my daughter." He got no further when Naruto interrupted. "You mean telling her how she is weak for not winning against someone who is supposedly the greatest genius in the Hyuga clan? How's that her fault? She fought to the best of her ability and you can't say jack about that because you weren't there to see it, were you? And if she's not the greatest genius in the clan, then that's not her fault either." Naruto almost choked on what Kyuubi was telling him to say. "Or am I mistaken to think that you are the one who conceived her? So wouldn't any shortcomings in that direction be your fault?" Hiyashi was now visibly fuming. Only thing she doesn't have in abundance is self-esteem, but that's not surprising if your actions today are any indication of the norm. How dare you? My daughter is weak and there's no way around it and it can't be changed. I only hope that her sister Hanabi won't turn out to be as useless as she is. Hiyashi was livid actually. Not only had this commoner dared voice the truth he himself didn't want to face, Neji was a genius among the Hyuga, he'd also dared to question his abilities as a father, and a man. He was about to defend his position when the boy continued. Now Hiyashi-sama, we have established that Neji has the strongest of Hyuga blood in the past 100 years, so wouldn't it make the whole Hyuga clan look bad when I kick his ass around the stadium like it was an empty can? Naruto stopped to draw breath and gauge Hiyashi's reaction, something which was hard because he'd along the years cultivated a face of total composure. Only thing that gave away the Hyuga leader's anger was a pulsing vein on his forehead. Blah. This is pointless, there is no way rabble like you could ever defeat even the weakest of the Hyuga, let alone my nephew Neji. This caused Kyuubi to smile hook, line and sinker. Now all that remained was for Naruto to say the words, and the blonde said them, want to bet? If and when I kick the crap out of Neji you will take back all that crap about Hinata being weak and start treating her like you should treat your own daughter, and if for some reason I lose, well dunno you can ask anything really. He flashed out a confident grin to the now terrified Hinata. Cocky little bastard, anything him. Intriguing proposition, maybe if we could incorporate his apparent bloodline into the Hyuga, yes that might work. Hiyashi drew a breath and cleared his throat. Very well Uzumaki, I accept, and if you lose you will forget your ambitions of becoming a Hokage and be branded as a member of the Hyuga branch family so that our clan may benefit from your unique physique. He grinned wickedly. Actually, why won't we just brand that weak daughter of mine you are so eager to protect and marry you of to each other? Deciding that the matter was closed at that, he turned to leave only to hear Naruto's cheerful voice yelling after him, hey, you trying to bribe me so that I'd lose on purpose or what? After it was apparent to Naruto that Hiyashi was gone and wouldn't come back, he turned to furiously blushing Hinata. Suddenly realizing how awkward the situation was, Naruto blushed as well. Well you see Hinata, sorry I really didn't have the right to do that, but I just couldn't stand by and let that moron call you weak and all. He scratched the back of his head in embarrassment and then remembered something important. Aha Hinata-chan, I forgot that I brought ramen, here have some. Naruto busied himself by pulling out a table that he set near Hinata's bed and placed several cups of ramen on it. Hinata didn't notice though, she was totally out of it. First she was being berated by her father only to be fiercely defended by Naruto, who then made a bet with her father that would most surely land them as a married couple, and if that wasn't enough Naruto had brought her food and had called her Hinata-chan of all things. Then something else clicked. The boy whom she secretly loved had just placed his only dream on the line for her sake. Looking frantically about, she noticed that the said boy had just deposited a bowl of steaming ramen in front of her and had a carefree, almost eager expression on his face. She began to whisper out, Naruto-kun, you must withdraw from this bet, you can't risk your dreams. Naruto only raised his eyebrow in amazement. He wasn't sure how Hinata would react to bet, but he certainly wasn't expecting her to only worry about his chances of becoming a Hokage. He needed time to think, and luckily the excuse was only an arm's length away. Don't worry about that now Hinata-chan, just eat that ramen before it gets cold and we can talk after that, right? Trying to set an example, he dug in. After Naruto cleaned out 4 bowls of ramen, 3 of his own and 1 he'd brought for Hinata, who demurely declined the second bowl, saying that 1 bowl was enough for her, he grabbed the bag he'd brought and handed it over to Hinata, who, blushing only slightly, peeked into the bag only to squeal out, cinnamon rolls, my favorites, how did you know? Now it was Naruto's turn to blush, but before he could even begin to explain, Akai cut in. He bullied that information out from your teammate Hinata-chan. That was yesterday when we came to check up on you and brought you that plushie to keep you company. This blatant lie caused Naruto to gasp. He hadn't bullied anything from Shino, just merely asked if there was any food Hinata liked in particular. He rubbed his temples while thinking, damn, I swear Akai and Kyuubi are in league and playing matchmakers. A thought that caused Kyuubi to snort in amusement. He checked the time and noticed that he'd have to meet that mysterious teacher of his pretty soon. Turning to look at the still blushing Hinata, he said, "Look, Hinata, like I said, I'm sorry about that bet I made with your father, but it just made me so mad when he put you down like that. But don't worry, I won't lose, so you don't have to marry me or anything." He blushed again at the word marry, but continued, "Anyway, I have to meet this teacher who's supposed to show me some stuff, so I'll come visit you tomorrow or." Hinata was playing with her fingers and blushing. "Naruto-kun, I would gladly become a member of the branch house for you, but you can't give up your dream." Naruto decided that if he was to get any reply from the shy girl, he'd have to administer his patented anti-finger playing no jutsu, and so he grabbed Hinata's hands, effectively stopping the nervous motion. The blush didn't diminish, however. With great difficulty, Hinata was able to overcome the faint that nearly overwhelmed her and managed to squeak out, "Hi, Naruto-kun, it would be nice too, if you would, tomorrow." Bemused, Naruto shook his head slightly and decided that she'd probably faint if he held her hands any longer. So he let Akai get her last petting of the day before collecting the kid and said, "Well, see you tomorrow then, Hinata-chan, I gotta run." So, with that, he left the room only to poke his head through the door a second later. "Oh, and get better soon, okay? So maybe you can help me with my training and stuff. Well, bye again." And then he was gone, leaving poor Hinata in her bed pondering the most bizarre, yet at the same time most gratifying, lunch of her young life. Naruto was pondering things along the same lines when he ran towards the Konoha Hot Spring Resort with an easy lope. He wondered why on earth would his new sensei want to meet at the hot springs though. Maybe he'll teach me some cool techniques involving hot water. At this, images of lobster red Neji entered his mind, causing him to laugh out loud along with Kyuubi. Or maybe he's just an old man who wants to take a nice relaxing bath while planning out my training. Playing through the myriad of possibilities in his head, he soon arrived at the hot springs. Looking around the entrance, he saw no sign of a white-haired man, so he decided to check the inside, only to find them all but deserted. At first he thought he was the only one in the hot springs, but that theory was trashed when he heard an oddly familiar chuckle. It reminded him of the sounds Kakashi-sensei made when he read that perverted book of his. "Oh great, another day, another pervert. I guess I'll just trash that hentai while I wait for that Jiraiya or whatever." Looking about, he quickly spotted someone squatting near the fence that separated the women's side from the men's side. Taking a better look of the man, he could only feel despair starting to creep in. Old man, with a spiky white hair, and obviously a pervert. Why the hell do these things happen to me? Why? Feeling somehow betrayed, he decided to vent on the old pervert and snuck up behind him. "Hey you old man, why are you peeping at women's bath? You aren't a pervert, are you?" Feeling somewhat satisfied when he could hear the women running away from their baths, he smirked at the old man who was yelling, "Baka baka baka baka." In utter desolation, Naruto smirked and said, "You are just a pervert. Anyway, are you Jiraiya?" The pervert began a weird dance of sorts. "Thanks for asking. I am Holy Master Sennin, also known as the Toad Sennin or the Great Jiraiya-sama, remember that?" Seeing that Naruto was clearly unimpressed, he added, "And I'm no ordinary pervert. I gather data at the hot springs for my novels. I'm a writer, you see." Jiraiya whipped out a book labeled Ika Ika Paradise Volume 2 feet, causing Naruto to point his finger at the book and stutter something. "So you are familiar with my works?" His expression turned gleeful. "Ooh, to think that so young would know my works. This is getting pretty popular, I see." He was totally devastated when Naruto began to yell, "Ah, that's the dirty book that Kakashi-sensei reads. You are even worse than he is if you write that smut." Naruto shook his fist. "And you are supposed to train me not peep on women. Kakashi. So this is Arashi's brat. Hey, All he would need is a change of clothes and he could easily pass for the young Arashi, hell even the attitude is similar. And if he has truly begun to absorb Kyuubi it would be interesting to train him. Grinning as an idea formed itself, Jiraiya cocked his head. Train you? Why should I train you? You are just a brat who interrupted my data gathering. But seeing as you have potential I might consider it if you fulfill my request. He began to shape a female body with his hands. Bring me a fruit that has matured like that and I'll oversee your training. Naruto was barely able to restrain himself from strangling the pervert and being sick over the cheesiness of the hentai's request when Kyuubi made a rather evil suggestion. Now he was barely able to restrain himself from buckling over in laughter as he yelled, "Hey Aro Sennin, I'll get you your matured fruit in a flash, just you wait." As he took off in full run leaving behind one happy Jiraiya. I was going to train him anyway, but if he delivers some sexy babes, well, who am I to complain? Teehee. Only a few moments later Naruto returned and presented the matured fruit with glee, causing a Jiraiya to fall flat on his face. When he got up sweat dropped as Naruto was happily and quite extravagantly moving his hands over the large watermelon and chattering about how it had matured nicely. Sheesh, what a moron, maybe Sarutobi-sensei was wrong about this kid. He began to twiddle his fingers with a lustful expression on his face. You brat, I need sexy babes to inspire me. Naruto's face fell. He really didn't want to resort to this, but apparently there was no alternative. A quick handseal later Naruto transformed into a blonde girl, causing Jiraiya's eyes to nearly burst out from their sockets. Drool began to fall from the pervert's mouth as he yelled, "I like you." Causing Naruto to think he's a moron, the drooling pervert was circling around Naruto, taking in all the details and spouting inane babble. What do you call this jutsu? And, you are a genius. Naruto was sweating slightly. I seriously begin to think that all adults are perverts. He thought while trying to compose himself. Hey, does this mean you are going to train me then? The pervert nodded enthusiastically and stated that there was a condition. Now puzzled Naruto asked, what condition? Causing Jiraiya to turn around and poke his fingers together. Naruto barely made out the whisper of, you have to stay like that during the training, but it was enough. A vein popped on his forehead as he dispelled the henge and pointed a finger at the older man. You are just a Sukebe, you Aro Sennin. Quite surprisingly Jiraiya only laughed it out. I'm not an ordinary pervert, I'm a super pervert. He quickly turned serious. But enough of this entertainment, I was going to train you anyway because Sarutobi-sensei asked. Now let's leave and find someplace more private so we can talk. Few hours later they were sitting on a log in the forest. Jiraiya had proven to be an apt listener, though he had been somewhat too keen to hear a detailed description of Kyuubi's human form, but Naruto shrugged that off as normal for someone who openly admits to being a super pervert. The Sennin looked thoughtful for a moment. So basically you have to beat up a Hyuga genius in 1 month's time. Normally I'd say you don't have any chance, but considering the fact that you can use Kyuubi's chakra, have a dojutsu that would allow you to analyze his moves, not to mention that you have worn Arashi's genjutsu bracers for the last 2 months or so. He stood up. Meet me here tomorrow morning at 8. I'll have a training schedule for you then, but as for now I need to go see Sarutobi-sensei. With that he vanished in a whirl of leaves, leaving Naruto sitting alone on the log thinking, damn, I really need to learn how to do that. Naruto was feeling content again. Aro Sennin, despite his obvious pervertedness, seemed to be a reasonably strong, and given the fact that he was supposedly one of the legendary Sannin was only an added incentive. Besides that, he'd found a nice surprise when he got back from his meeting with the Sennin. Kakashi had been good to his word and had left several scrolls for Naruto to read, including to his delight scroll that contained the Chidori, and an attached note that said only to use Chidori when his Shinkugan was active to evade possible enemy counter-attacks. There were also several notes made by Kakashi that detailed some tactics that might be useful against the Byakugan and all the info he had about Neji's abilities. Next morning he was early at the agreed upon location and so immersed in the Chidori scroll that he didn't even notice Jiraiya until Akai let out a warning yap, which was rewarded by a small piece of jerky thrown at the kid as a gift from the old pervert who'd taken immediate liking of the cute little fox. Well brat, I hear that your chakra control is good enough, so today we'll try summoning. Biting his thumb and smearing his palm with blood, he performed few hand seals and yelled, Kuchio's no jutsu, summoning technique, causing a large toad with a scroll in its mouth to appear. The toad then handed the scroll down to Naruto while Jiraiya explained, this is a toad summoning contract, write your name in blood and press your fingerprints on the contract and you will be able to summon toads. Naruto was about to do so when he was interrupted by Kyuubi, who bid him to come and visit her. Complying, Naruto concentrated and found himself on Kyuubi's meadow. The said fox was sitting near a similar looking scroll and said, now listen kid, I've been meaning to give you contract with foxes, and while I can guarantee that they will cooperate, but I can't say the same for toads. You would have to negotiate a deal with Gamabunta the boss toad if you are to sign their contract as well. Anyway, here's the summoning contract, so sign in blood please. Bewildered, Naruto complied and signed the contract, only to find himself in the real world where he was being shaken by somewhat concerned Jiraiya. Hey kid, what happened? You just spaced out for a moment there. Naruto explained what had happened to the dubious-looking Jiraiya, who decided that regardless he should sign the toad contract because toads were much cooler than foxes and because Naruto's father had also summoned toads. Shrugging, the blonde complied, bit his thumb open and signed the contract, after which the pervert dismissed his summoned toad. Running few times though the hand seals necessary for summoning, Jiraiya said, now, if you really have two different contracts, it's important that you focus on the animal you wish to summon. And now we will practice. Yes. Pull out all the Kyuubi's chakra you can and perform Kuchio's no jutsu. Snickering to himself, Naruto complied and began to pump out Kyuubi's chakra in vast amounts. In fact, he pumped out enough chakra that Ero Sennin decided it would be prudent to put some distance between himself and Naruto, just in case. The decision proved to be wise, seeing as there was a huge billow of smoke that solidified into a very large toad that bellowed, Jiraiya. Damn you Jiraiya. Needless to say, Naruto was more than slightly intimidated by the belligerent, not to mention huge, toad, but steeled himself nonetheless and climbed down to his nose, making the toad raise an questioning eyebrow. Hey you little punk, where's Jiraiya? Naruto looked to where the white-haired man used to be but saw neither hide nor hair of the said Sennin. Looking back up at the toad, he said, well, he was there just a moment ago. Anyway, are you Gamabunta? This made the large toad snort in disdain. It's Gamabunta-sama to a little shrimp like you. Now tell me, why the hell did that perverted geezer summon me, and why is there a weird little punk on my head? Naruto blinked. He hadn't realized that summons didn't even know who summoned them. Shrugging the fact aside as unimportant, he made a face. Well, Gamabunta-sama, I actually summoned you. Making a forestalling gesture to prevent the toad from erupting into laughter, he continued, see, I used Kyuubi's chakra to summon you. I'm the weird little punk who got the damn fox sealed in me, and incidentally the seal has begun to drain the fox into me, so I kinda got more than enough chakra to summon the likes of you. He now got Gamabunta's undivided attention. Anyway, the thing is, Ero Sennin gave me this summoning contract and all, but Kyuubi had me sign the fox contract. She promised that the foxes would cooperate, but that I would need your approval of this as well. Gamabunta was now serious. Brat, so you are the one who was chosen to contain the Kyuubi. Give me one good reason why I should order any of my subordinates to serve you if you already have a pact with the furballs. Naruto shrugged. He really didn't know the differences between foxes or frogs, with the exception that foxes had tail and fur really. Well, I guess Ero Sennin wanted me to summon toads because he and my father both had a contract with toads. Other than that, I can't really say. I mean, it's not like I'm an expert on this summoning stuff, this is my first time, you know. But maybe the old man could tell. He's hiding in that bush over there. Gamabunta turned his gaze towards a now slightly shaking bush and bellowed. Jiraiya, come out, you dirty old lech. Is what this brat true? Is he truly the Yondaime's legacy? The bush stopped shaking and Jiraiya popped out and began to tell an abbreviated version of Naruto's life. After some 10 minutes of explaining, the toad boss let out a bellowing laugh. You are interesting, you little punk. I'll let you become my subordinate, and if you need the help of my kin, we will answer your call. Now get off my head so I can leave this place. Naruto jumped down and Gamabunta vanished in a cloud of smoke, leaving ecstatic Naruto and unnerved Jiraiya behind. Well kid, I guess you did better than I expected with that. I was actually thinking that summoning might take you longer to learn, so that'll be all for today, but feel free to practice summoning in whatever it was that you were studying earlier. The pervert waved his hand and left, thinking Arashi, my boy, your kid is certainly something else. He even befriended the Gamabunta. But now for the important things. To data gathering. He began to chuckle pervertedly while walking in the general direction of Konoha bathhouses. Naruto stayed behind and began once more to study the Chidori scroll. By dinner time he was hungry, tired and happy. He'd advanced noticeably due the similarity between his foxfire and the Chidori, and was now capable of performing the initial stages. He still lacked control due the vast amounts of power needed to perform the jutsu, but that would come in time, now if he only could learn to perform the Haraishin. Looking about, he noticed to his dismay that Akai was feasting on a rabbit she'd hunted down on her own and didn't look willing to share, so he picked up the kid and her meal and headed home for a meal of his own. Having filled his stomach with sweet and sour pork, rice and vegetables, he decided that a visit to the hospital was in order. He wanted to check on Lee and Hinata. Pondering again on the mysteries of emotions, he headed towards the hospital. This went on for a week. He would train with Ero Sennin during the days, perfecting his techniques and learning new ones. Jiraiya actually knew the principle behind Haraishin no Jutsu, and had begun to explain this to the eager boy. To further his understanding in the technique, Jiraiya taught the boy how to perform Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker technique, that produced a similar only weaker effect of Haraishin. At the end of the week, Naruto had pretty much mastered the use of Shunshin Chidori, and had actually managed to correctly perform Haraishin 3 times, out of the 100 or so times he'd tried. And then the week was over. He found out that Lee was already released and was slowly trying to get back to his brutal training regimen, and that Lee was actually eager to help him train against Neji. Something which he politely declined, saying that he couldn't accept the offer for another week at least, lest he aggravate Lee's injuries. This seemed to deflate Lee slightly, but he quickly bounced back up, declaring that he would be better than ever after 1 week, and if he wasn't, then he'd. Naruto sighed. Some things never changed. Other thing that changed during the week was that Hinata was released from hospital but restricted from doing anything strenuous for at least 2 weeks. She then did something she considered daring, and brought Naruto and herself lunch the following day, something which Naruto readily accepted. Jiraiya didn't complain either. His policy was that there were never too many women around, especially adorable girls like Hinata. This went for another week until the damnable pervert asked Naruto to share some details about his cute little girlfriend, something which resulted in a seriously pissed off Naruto and painful beating by 2 chakra-composed tails. The question itself wasn't the only thing that had pissed him off. It was the frustration on whether or not he actually felt any affection to Hinata as a person, or did he feel something for her because she knew about Kyuubi and had accepted him. Naruto was so entangled in the layers of this question that he didn't even notice Hinata until he heard a soft "Anyo, Naruto-kun, I brought lunch." Letting out a sigh, Naruto turned around and decided that he really needed to talk about this with Hinata right now, well after the lunch anyway.